Well, hello, Saskatchewan. Happy Monday. Maybe not so happy if you watched the BC Lions defeat the Saskatchewan Roughriders again on tape delay this morning. We all had to live through it. We'll survive. The sun came up this morning, and we'll talk about it. That's what we do here on the Sports Cage. Good afternoon. I'm Dave Thomas, along in for Tegan Whitco this afternoon. Yes, we will break that down, but boy, do we have a full program in store for you today. Of course, we are going to go a little double talk, and we'll talk to the one and only Darian Durant. Yes, Doubles will join us. He'll break down the game in British Columbia, talk about what's coming up with Toronto, and of course, we are going to get to some thoughts when it comes to what's happening around the Canadian Football League. That is coming up a little bit later on, but boy, do we have other things lined up for you. Things are happening in the CFL today, and particularly in the nation's capital, and it may have ramifications here in Riderville. I'll explain what's happening. Of course, Justin Dunk went ahead yesterday, and on our 3 Down Nation deep dive on the Saskatchewan Roughriders countdown to kickoff for Croft Electric, he pointed out that perhaps the Ottawa Redblacks would come exploring one of the Saskatchewan Roughriders executive for their new vacant head of football operations. Wow. Colson on the ball early. And yes, it did raise the ire of Rider Nation yesterday. We'll tell you what he said and how those implications may or may not impact the Saskatchewan Roughriders. That's coming up. We'll talk to JC Abbott from 3downnation.com all about that. Also from Vancouver. You aren't going to believe, you will not believe what the narrative around the BC Lions victory was yesterday. I'm thinking I'm going to hear, the BC Lions have won 4 in a row after a terrible start to their season. They're now back at 500. They're in contention in the West, and they're going to be dangerous. Why wouldn't I think of hearing that? That wasn't what you heard from the BC Lions yesterday. Giulio Caravatta, who is the color analyst of the BC Lions, will join us a little bit later this afternoon to talk about... I'm scratching my head. If you're watching the stream at sportscage.com, it made my head hurt hearing this conversation and asking to be a part of it. We'll explore that, tell you how it pertains to the green and white and our team. That is coming up in just a little bit as well. We've got the Riders Coaches Show. Offensive assistant coach Josh Donnelly is going to talk to us and tell you whether or not Trevor Harris is actually ticked off at his team. There are some that online believe that that's the case. Again, if you watch the pictures from yesterday in Vancouver, some may have that. I guess some might have that opinion, but I don't think that it's founded. We'll ask Coach Josh Donnelly about that, as well as whether or not he put Cheerios in the Grey Cup. It looked like Trevor Harris, if you're watching the stream, was just throwing up in his helmet after, I believe that was an interception, Colson? Was that an interception?
After an interception, yeah. I don't think he was throwing up. No, I think he was telling his helmet what was what.
He was letting his helmet, he was having a moment.
Yeah. Something like that.
See, there's some people that are quite upset about this and this show of emotion. And I'm like, well, what do you think about Davis Alexander when he trash talks the other bench?
I mean, I appreciate when Davis does it. I don't appreciate it when Ryan Dinwiddie did it, but that's besides the point. Coach has got to keep it together a bit more. I mean, Trevor Harris is human, like the rest of us, right? He's got 40,000 passing yards. I don't have that. I don't think you do, Dave.
No, I don't have that.
So he's allowed to get upset when things aren't going right?
Tell me this. Who was he upset at in that picture? Who was he upset at?
Knowing Trevor Harris himself. Even if the receiver ran the route wrong or something or whatever, right? He's going to go, I didn't communicate this clearly. I didn't lead him on well enough. Or, I didn't see that DB hiding behind the goal post, whatever it was that triggered the receiver to go out instead of in, whatever, right? I think he is angry at himself, just knowing Trevor, right? Like, he's not going to blame any of the guys. Now, he might come alongside and be like, hey, what did you see there? Because this is what I saw, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page, right? He's going to communicate about it and try and coach it, but I don't think he's going to blame the guys unless they literally come to a factual point of, okay, here's who made the mistake here, whatever it was, right? I don't think he's going to blame the guys. They might come to an agreement on that, but that's my outside view. You know the players a bit better than I do. You get to be in the locker room a bit more, but...
Here's what I'm throwing out there.
All right.
Why is there a narrative online that Trevor Harris doesn't like his teammates? There's one picture that you might have seen on a television broadcast. Now, the one thing that I'm going to point out, and this is very self-serving, I'll be very, very upfront with this, right? But the best thing that happens on the Rider Broadcast Network is hearing Luke Mullender, because Luke doesn't have the narrow scope of the television production to analyze what's happening on the field of play. Mm-hmm. And so when you are there in person, you know this yourself. You go to a game at Mosaic Stadium, you may come away with an entirely different story on the game than what someone watching from at home.
Yeah.
And so I just think that that's very interesting that some people that would have that one shot wouldn't realize everything else that was going on around that in that instance and circumstance. Just saying. Exactly.
Because when you're in the stadium, you can only see what you can see from your seat. When you're at home, you've got the million different camera angles they're feeding you, right? They're feeding you the narrative. Whether that narrative is actually what's happening in the game or not, it's a little bit made for TV, right? But
true. Very true.
Or radio.
You said it, made for TV. So we are going to explore the outcome of this contest. We're also going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to join us on Saturday night when the Riders are back on the field hosting the Toronto Argonauts. SaskTel Pick the Score is coming up a little bit later on. We may even give bonus entries today.
Ooh.
Yeah, bonus. I like bonus entries.
Do you have the authority to give that away?
No, but that's why we're doing it. Tegan's not here and she don't need to know. Also could send your family to Mexico. I'll explain how that's coming up a little bit later here on the Sports Cage on a Monday. So let's dive deep into this thing. 30-16, the outcome yesterday. The Saskatchewan Roughriders fall in Vancouver to the BC Lions. Of course, the Riders drop to 6-4. BC improves to 5-5. Let's go back, and first of all, you're going to get an opportunity to vote. And again, a couple of ways that you can vote. You can go to sportscage.com. It'll be up momentarily for your opportunity to vote in. Or you can go ahead and text us at 306-936-6262. Of course, the text line on this Monday Sports Cage is brought to you by our great friends each and every day over at Prairieland Rentals. From small power tools to skid steers, they probably have what you need. Deal with the owner at 600 Albert Street. So you can text us 306-936-6262, or as always, you can call in. That's the in-town number. Call toll free. We'll pick up the charge at 1-866-767-0620. Does anybody play long distance anymore?
I have no idea.
You probably have, don't remember the $5 a month or something you had to pay for long distance.
I was never old enough to have to pay for that. I'm aware of what it is, because when I was just starting to get a cell phone, that was still a thing, but I knew, I'm a teenager, I'm never going to be in a position where I need that.
Okay.
So I've avoided that. And then now everything's over Wi-Fi anyways, right? So
yeah. Okay, well, if you do call 1-866-767-0620 and there happened to be some form of charge, we'll still pick it up.
Uh-huh.
All right? Fair. Let's go ahead. Let's rewind. At 30-16, the final score. We do have 3 plays of the game for you to bid on, to vote on as our Rider play of the week. Here we go, Colson. Run it for us.
7:57 to go in the third quarter. Riders trail 20-6. Man in motion is Daniel Johnson pre-snap. Yes, I said that right. 5-man pressure. Ball near side. Johnson's got it. 50. Tries to hurdle a man. Now gets forced out of bounds by Darnell Sankey at the 41. First career reception for the offensive lineman, Daniel Johnson.
Well, you need a spark here. Johnson goes from his tight end side out all the way out wide, and nobody really covers him. They're all covering down on the initial receivers, and nobody's used to seeing big Daniel Johnson getting the football. So here he does, and he gets a first down. That's a great play, and they keep him in the game.
He looks all nonchalant about it, too. Rourke back to pass as they go quick to the Lions. Rourke steps up, has a man. It's Jackson, and it's picked off. Jackson Ford's got it. He's got to get up, though, and run. He'll do it to the 10, 15, 20. Still on his feet going to the 30. Finally upended out of bounds, but Jackson Ford with the interception, his first in the CFL, and a big Olympic RTM's turnover in way and form of the Riders.
This is a fantastic job. The Riders keep Rourke in the pocket. He's able to step up, but he's not able to get to the outside, and he throws up a duck, and it's intercepted. Is that the way back into this game, Dave?
Second down, Saskatchewan. Harris back to pass, looks near side. Gonna throw it up, wide open. Dale Duncan Busby has it to the end zone. Touchdown, Riders! 32-yard touchdown reception. Dale Duncan Busby, his third start of the season, and hey, the Riders are back in business.
Yeah, the response you knew that Saskatchewan needed after this interception, that's exactly how you wanted it to go, right? 12 minutes is a lot of time in the CFL.
So there you go, your three options. Daniel Johnson, offensive lineman, who actually played some tight end earlier in his career. So it shouldn't have been such a shock to me that he was in motion pre-snap, but you don't see that very often, and then nobody covered him.
When you see an offensive lineman like lining up to catch the pass, blah, blah, whatever, it's usually out of tight end, and they usually just line up. You don't see them in motion.
No.
That's the one that threw me off. I'm listening at home to the game, and you go, Daniel Johnson in motion. I'm like, Daniel Johnson? I know there's three Johnsons, but still, like, you can tell them apart pretty easily. Still.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that one threw me for a loop. That one was great.
And the best part of all is he just nonchalant, oh, yeah, whatever, 17-yard reception, I got it.
Yeah.
Jackson Ford made an incredible close on the football to make the interception. I know there were some plays that some would suggest that he'd want back later in the ball game, but that was a big one there. And then, of course, Del Duncan Busby. And the one that, if you go to sportscage.com, of course, you can see everything in a podcast form, or go to our YouTube channel and like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. But if you see Del Duncan Busby, pardon me, on that play, you'll see that he throws on the brakes and TJ Lee goes flying by in front of him, at which point Duncan Busby just takes off to the end zone.
Yeah.
But you can see him actually skid and slide on the turf. And there were some mixed reactions to this new playing surface in Vancouver because, of course, the World Cup of Soccer was there. They took the grass, or put the grass in, took the grass out for soccer, and then they put down this new surface. And there was a lot of slip and falls on the surface. And man, I went for a walk on the field just before the players went out. And like, it's hard. Like Luke talks about playing on concrete with just little turf, little practice carpet thrown over top of it when he was playing.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't a lot of bounce or give on that surface. And some of the big hits that you saw, like Johnny Johnson took a big one, Sam Emelis at the end of the game took a big shot, and you can understand why.
Yeah.
So, end of the day, if you put on the analyst hat, as did Luke Wollander, as did Wes Cates, as did Justin Dunk, as did Barney Shankrook when they took your calls, 4 turnovers, 2 touchdowns called back because of penalties, those really, the statement in the game. Riders lose 30-16, and we had lots of folks weighing in, as we do now. Again, whether you're on the text line or on our YouTube chat, we'll get you in a moment, but this is what Taylor had to say post-game.
I mean, a couple things here. I don't quite understand the challenge later in that game, which I'm sure you guys are probably going to get a few calls on that tonight. But earlier in the game, if you guys remember, before I think it was second quarter, Nathan Rourke he did a no huddle, and he decided to move the ball, continue on the game, why are we not challenging something like that, And then a couple other things I don't understand, and kind of referencing what Wes was saying a little bit earlier about, Samuel Lemius taking a beating this day after it coming right from injury, right? Well, what are we doing? We're putting him in jeopardy to get injured for another 6 games at the end there. Like, Trevor likes to be dangerous and throw into triple coverage, which I think he needs to get his confidence up before he starts doing that again. It's been constant interceptions with this guy for the last couple of games. And now we're going to be out of our best wide receiver again for a while. I think the whole game today was, yes, the reffing is terrible. It's always terrible when we go to Vancouver, let's be honest. But we're not going to blame it on the refs. It was a poorly played game, and it was a poorly coached game all around. I honestly, I'm a big Rough Rider fan, but I couldn't be more disappointed than I am today about this.
Well, there's points there to be made, right? And again, want to hear from you, 306-936-6262 or 1-866-767-0620. So let's unpack. First of all, when it came to the challenge, right, and the Javon Catoy reception first half, BC Lions do exactly what you're supposed to do. If you are unsure if your teammate made the reception, you quickly sprint up the line and force the opponent's hand to either have to throw the challenge flag or let the play roll on and have to live with what the outcome may be. And that was where they were at. Nathan Rourke, he executed the next play to perfection and didn't give the Riders any opportunity. Why would you burn a challenge on a play that you don't know if you're going to win? You at least have to have a 50 shot, And I would say at that point it was a 10-90, right? 10% that you're going to get it right. But that's just me. Again, your take could be much different. But I think that's the right call. Don't challenge it because, again, you're not going to get the replay at BC Place. They're not going to show that to the visitor and help them out. And you've literally got seconds. Now, don't forget, BC, on the Jackson Ford interception, they tried the exact same thing, right? They made a questionable play on the sideline that might have been ruled a fumble, so making sure nobody had any extra opportunity to take a look at it. Nathan Rourke runs to the line, but by doing so, I think he hurried himself, and a throw he tried to make to Jermaine Jackson that wasn't there. Jackson Ford picks him off, coming in over the top, and then the most worrisome part of it all was that Jackson Ford picked it up and he wasn't touched, right? So he's on the turf, and it looked like he was about to celebrate, spike the ball. You do that, it's a fumble because it's live. So Jackson's kind of like, yeah, woohoo, I got it. And then it's like, no, run. And you could hear the riders, his teammates yelling, like, get up and go. And he did. So,
thankfully.
Yes. So there's that part to unpack when it comes to the challenges. Corey Mace, by the way, this year is 1 for 5 in challenges, as challenge success rate for coaches is substantially lower this year than what it has been the previous 2. So just keep that into mind, right? So the Riders did take a shot at a challenge right on the pass interference call to see if they could get that call made when Dylan Jette didn't come up with the reception and it was picked off by the BC Lions. And maybe that's where you go with more along the lines of what was being asserted there in that phone call, right? And again, love your thoughts. Want to hear what you say as we break down this 30-16 victory by BC over the Riders. But the other assertion was that maybe Trevor Harris doesn't have confidence right now, or that he's put his receivers in peril. Believe you me, having known and listened to Trevor talk pregame, postgame, buses, so on and so forth, the way that he puts the football on his teammates is subtle nonverbal communication. So when he goes low, right, if he puts the ball at his receiver's hip, that's to let his receiver know that, hey, traffic's coming, get down. In the case of Sam Emilus at the end of the game, it was an unfortunate play. Like I say, that turf to me doesn't have a lot of give. And he went up and he came down full bore on his back and side. And again, if you're watching the stream at sportscage.com, the play was there to be made, but the ball had to be thrown up high because of the dropping linebackers. Trust me, Trevor Harris doesn't want Sam Emilus hurt. Trust me, if Sam Emilus was not good to go or in harm's way, the team wouldn't have played him. Are the Saskatchewan Roughriders better for having him in the lineup? Absolutely, right? Wouldn't you take that chance or that shot? Just throwing that out there.
Like Trevor did.
Exactly.
Yeah. He looks like he either just got winded landing on his back or maybe a bit of whiplash slamming his head into the turf. But that's just from the camera angles we have. I think anybody would be winded falling from that height.
Oh.
Especially getting your feet taken out. Like, he's going up expecting that he can come back down on his feet, and then his feet get hit, and he lands on his back. Like,
very good point. Very good point. So, again, nobody wants to see that injury. Again, I think we'll leave that there. Now, on the text line, Prairie Land Rentals text line, Dean says, I really think that Mueller needs to get to call a better game. The last 2 to 3 games, the offense has become stale and predictable. We rarely try to stretch the field. Opposing defenses have figured out our offense and jumping the passes. Okay. Who am I to dispute that? The one thing I will say, though, is that the 2 interceptions that Trevor threw yesterday, it seemed to be miscommunication with the receivers on both instances. Keyshawn Johnson had an opportunity to go in towards the post, and then Keyshawn read it differently than what Trevor did. And I was told once by a very wise person that an interception is never 100% on the quarterback, because there's a receiver involved, there's blocking involved. There are not just one quarterback, there are 23 other players on the field. And again, in the Keyshawn Johnson one or the Dylan Jette one that we're going to watch on the stream at sportscage.com, it appears that Trevor just threw it right into the arms of the awaiting defensive back. However, upon further review, right, there was an instance where had Dylan Jette kind of came inside that defensive back instead of forcing it up the field by 2 yards more and keeps running, then maybe he makes that reception, right? And that's kind of what Trevor was anticipating. So everybody's got to be on the same page. And right now with the Rider receivers, I'm not making an excuse right now. There are times when it doesn't seem like they are. There are other times when they seem like the world is their oyster, if you know what I mean. But Dean,
a couple 400-yard games, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, right? How about we go to Robin? And Robin had some thoughts as well on the radio roundtable last night.
If I was a coach, I would not put Emlis in getting them targeted 12 times. When you look at Keyshawn Johnson only getting 9 and beating the crap out of a guy that just came out of a 6-game injury list, I'd at least give him 1 or 2 games to get his feet warmed again in the game and at least play so he can get enough underneath his belt. Mm-hmm. You don't beat the crap out of him just because he came off the 6-game injury list to put him back on. The second thing I looked at was Harris's interception down on the red zone where he needed, 3 or 4 yards to get a first down, and he doesn't even go for it. What he does is throw the ball, and I said, don't throw the ball, and he threw the ball, and it got intercepted. When you got Tommy Stevens, that's almost guaranteed to get 1 yard at least. And, you look at that play, and you also run it on the field with your hands wide open. Where does the ball protection come on from? You learned that in college. You learned that in playing and, practice. You cover up the ball. You don't run it out on the field with the hands open. And, I look at these plays, and the play calling basically sucked. And, there's a few other things that I looked at, that holdings where Connolly could have got a touchdown. How about the other touchdown that the guy fumbled the ball? We're 3 yards away from him? No, you got to clean it up. And it almost looked like it goes back to Dickinson's days, and I'm not really happy with the fact that they were played that crappy.
So,
I don't know how Dickinson could have any impact on any of this. I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, I understand where the caller was frustrated, but
oh yeah,
Robin was no more frustrated than the coaching staff following the game. And basically everything that Coach Mace pointed out to us post-game was exactly what Robin pointed out to us. So the Quali Conley touchdown taken off the board because of the illegal hands to the face.
Yep.
That one irritated Coach. Nick Weeb's first career touchdown that never happened, same as his first career punt block that never happened due to penalty, again, comes off the board because of penalty. And Coach said right off the hop, I'm going to have to get more stern this week because these penalties are absolutely killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And what a play call that was to Quali Conley. Again, Mark Mueller didn't call for hands to the face. He called a little screen in the flat after he vacated that side of the field.
Are you sure he didn't call for hands to the face?
I'm pretty sure they don't coach that.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
Just asking.
Just saying. And then if you go back to that no yards call, right, that was assessed, I believe it was Malik Straker, but Jackson Ford was also in the vicinity as well. But regardless, the player that was closest to the ball and infringing on that 5-yard halo, you're going to see it on the stream, sportscage.com, if you're at home listening or anywhere on the field, bouncing around, whatever the case may be. What you will see is that Malik Straker is trying to break down and stop.
Yep, and he's sliding on his butt.
Exactly. Turf at BC Place. Again, the number of slips. And again, that one cost the Riders there. And again, it's unfortunate. It's a penalty. You can't argue that it's a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unfortunate. And again, Nick Weeb shrugs it off. But again, what a huge momentum break that is right there. So, again, lots to unpack. We encourage you to get in on this, and throughout the course of the afternoon, you're also going to get encouraged to get in on SaskTel Pick the Score, because not only could you win a couple of tickets to the game today, you could also win a $200 SaskTel gift card. We'll explain about that coming up a little bit later on. As well, a trip to Mexico for you and the family is up for grabs. We've got the details on that. We're breaking down the Riders' setback in BC yesterday, as well as talking local sports. We do it here on the Sports Cage. We do it first, and we're going to get to more of your thoughts coming up in just a little bit. But around the corner, we go to 3downnation.com's JC Abbott. We'll get his take on what's happening, not only with the Riders, but around the league. Some big news coming out of the nation's capital again today, and 3downnation.com was all over it. We've got the story coming up right after the break. It's all here on the Sports Cage. We're streaming at sportscage.com and on 620 CKRM. Happy Monday afternoon. Dave Thomas filling in for Tegan Whitco on this Monday with the Sports Cage, breaking down lots that's happening in the world of sports. The Prairie Football Conference season into week number 3. The Regina Thunder improved to 3-0 with a victory yesterday. The Saskatoon Hilltops are 2-1, both back on the field on Sunday this coming week. We'll also explore what's happening in the major leagues of baseball, but lots of CFL and Rider talk here following yesterday's 30-16 setback to the BC Lions as we now head out on the Western Pizza guest hotline. The perfect pizza every time. Try the number 2. Tell them I sent you. JC Abbott from 3downnation.com is joining us. JC, thanks so much for taking time. And was reading your take at 3downnation.com and checking out what the thoughts were following that football game. Giulio Caravatta is going to be joining us in a little bit. And the narrative that I heard at BC Place was mind-blowing. What did you take away, though, from that game yesterday between the Riders and Lions?
Well, I think from a Lions perspective, it's a huge statement win, right? This is a team that's as hot as anybody right now. 4 straight victories. They were in the depths of despair, really, at the start of the season. They faced a ton of adversity, and they've now bounced back. They're 500. They're in 3rd place in the West Division. I think they can continue climbing. And maybe the scary thing, if you're an opponent of the BC Lions, is I don't think they've played their best or most complete football yet at this stage of the year. So lots to be optimistic about. If you're a Lions fan, for the Riders, I mean, it's the little errors, the little mistakes. They didn't get dominated by the Lions by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not overly concerned about the state of the Riders team at this point in the year. But when you get 2 touchdowns called back because of, penalties that were absolutely infractions, right? They're clear and obvious calls, but just little mental errors or technical errors that you make, and you're not playing disciplined football and you're making uncharacteristic mistakes, those things compound. And the Riders are going to have to learn how to clean a little bit of that up if they want to get back to their winning ways.
JC Abbott from 3downnation.com. I'm so proud that you're joining us here today following a game day for the Riders. I know I said there wouldn't be a test, but there is a test, and it's a multiple choice test. What is going right or has been the biggest factor in the BC Lions turnaround? Is it A, the receivers getting healthy, B, the defense figuring out what Mike Benavides is trying to do, or is it C, all of the above?
I think it's B. I think it's Mike Benavides, and I don't think it's particularly close, right? That defense was a liability for the first few games of the season, and he was rightly criticized for that. The players were rightly criticized, but they've turned it around. They found some fantastic pieces. I mean, Parker McKenna at weak side linebacker has been an absolute revelation. To me, he's the most outstanding rookie front runner. Stanley Thomas Oliver, I think, has been a really nice find at the one cornerback spot. He wasn't originally on the roster to start the year, so they're starting to uncover some of these hidden gems. Everybody's working together, and they've been one of the best defenses in the CFL over the last 4 or 5 games and really have been the driving force behind this winning streak. It hasn't been the offense. Even with Nathan Rourke coming back and some of the numbers he's put up, that unit is still not quite fully clicking. There's some mistakes being made there. The defense has had to bail them out. And when you think about where they came from to where they are now, pretty remarkable, and Mike Benavides deserves a lot of praise for that, as does the rest of his coaching staff.
When you look at the BC Lions offense, yesterday Xander Horvath has 10 carries, James Butler has got 3. I think that finally that ratio has gone in the right direction with the success that Xander Horvath has had this season. Do you see that? And there were times yesterday on a couple of occasions when both backs were in the game.
Yeah, the Lions have made the right decision to go with Xander Horvath as the feature back. I don't know how you could have gone the other direction with what we've seen from him over the last little bit. He's such a size mismatch. He brings so much to the offense. I like the fact that they're leaning on him. I don't know that they've found the perfect balance yet, though. And I've expressed some skepticism about how this tandem backfield works with Butler as the number 2, because he's not this traditional change-up back, and he doesn't bring a ton of value on special teams or in other areas. And to a certain degree, when you're giving Butler touches, and I don't want to sound like Butler's a bad player. He's a 1,000-yard back. He's a very competent player. I like James Butler a lot as a player and as a person. But when you're taking touches away from a guy like Horvath, whose game is about grinding down opponents, I think you're actually hamstringing both players because neither of them can get into the proper rhythm. I think the Lions are going to have to figure out what the best version of that combination looks like, and I'm not sure they're quite there yet.
And you may have just then answered my question. It was going to be, is there a reluctance to keep James Butler as involved as he has been in the past, given the success of Xander Horvath?
I think there is, right? But there's also a reluctance to take him off the roster because of what he's done for this team, what he means to his teammates, and also what he brings in some of the aspects that don't show up on the stat sheet. Like James Butler's an excellent pass protector, right? That sort of gets overlooked when you're looking at some of the rushing stats. But the Lions, I think, understand at this point that it has to be Horvath as the feature guy. And it creates a somewhat of an awkward dynamic. Frankly, I would be more in favor of them alternating. I think back a few years ago when I think it was Anthony Allen and Jeremiah Johnson were sort of a 1-2 punch in BC, and they switched off every couple of games to give them fresh legs. I think almost that's more productive than taking one guy off the field in the middle of the game and limiting the rhythm. So maybe I'm in the minority there, but I think there's still some tweaks to how that rushing attack can be maximized.
Full disclosure, JC Abbott, we are about 2 kilometers away from Mosaic Stadium. But if I was to stick my head out the door right now, do you think I'm hearing alarm bells going off in that facility right now after 2 straight losses?
I don't think you're hearing alarm bells, but certainly there should be some added motivation this week, right? Yeah, like I said off the top, I'm not concerned about the Saskatchewan Roughriders. If you're a Rider fan, I don't think you should be slamming the panic button. There's always going to be stretches in a season where your play slips a little bit because of injuries or wear and tear. That's just natural. And even last season, with how good the Riders were, there were those stretches in the season where they weren't quite at their best. And I think they're in one of those moments now. But I have full trust in Corey Mason, his staff, and the leadership core that Riders team has to turn this around. I don't think it's going to be that complicated to do so. You just have to get back to your fundamentals, and they very easily could have won that game against BC if not for a couple of mistakes that are easily correctable.
So do you have a concern, whether it's offensive, defensive, special teams? Do you have a concern that you would address right away?
For me, the biggest issue facing the Saskatchewan Roughriders, unfortunately, because I liked him a lot as a prospect, and I think he's a great kid as well, is Jackson Ford at the safety position, right? I think he's become a bit of a liability at this stage in the season. I don't know that I've ever written about an opponent in a post-game column focused on the Lions as much as I had to mention Jackson Ford, because he was involved in so many of the Lions' biggest plays. Now, he had the one interception on an underthrown ball from Nathan Rourke. Full credit to him. I think that was a fantastic play. But when you look back at some of the other major moments throughout the game, right? He gets trucked by James Butler on a 13-yard run. He gets hurdled by Xander Horvath. He gets looked off easily by Nathan Rourke on that Javon Catoy touchdown. He commits the penalty, which sets up Horvath's touchdown plunge. It was Malik Straker who was penalized for no yards on that Nick Weeb touchdown that was taken back, but Jackson Ford was also within the halo, so he easily could have been flagged for that as well. And then, of course, that Stanley Berryhill catch, which was a fantastic play by him. He fails to get the ball and doesn't deliver the big hit to disrupt it either. It sort of ends up in the worst of both scenarios where Berryhill's able to make the catch for a huge gain. I think we've seen in multiple weeks now that he's not necessarily taking the right angles. There have been some mental mistakes on the back end, and I know that the Riders like him a lot because he's a local guy and he's a great leader and he's a hard hitter. But I would reshuffle that secondary because there's been a couple of results this year that I think could have gone the other way if you were getting a little bit more from your safety position.
So the Riders turn the page this week, JC, and they look at the Toronto Argonauts, who've improved their record to 5-5. How big of a threat are the Argonauts coming in this week? I haven't seen the lines yet at all on the game.
I haven't taken a peek at the lines yet either, but the Argos are always going to be a threat, right? And this is a team that can press it down the field with the best of them, right? Chad Kelly has made more big-time throws, and this is a Pro Football Focus statistic, and where they describe the deepest throws down the field, the most difficult throws, the most accurate throws as big-time throws. He's got more of them, or at least he had coming into last week, than anyone else in the CFL. And quite frankly, it's not particularly close, right? He has special arm talent. Now, he's also vulnerable to a lot of turnovers. That makes it exciting on the other end because there's plenty of opportunities to take the ball away. But he's going to attack you, and he will threaten you deep. And the Riders have, on a couple of occasions, been vulnerable to that because of the injuries that they're facing in their secondary right now. That would be my primary concern is how do I eliminate the big plays of Chad Kelly looking downfield to the DeMonte Coxies of the world, because if he's able to hit those shots consistently, it's not going to be a good result.
Let's turn the page. JC Abbott of 3downnation.com joins us. Of course, you can read and see his work at 3downnation.com. Do want to get your opinion on what's happening in Ottawa. We will address the fact that your colleague Justin Dunk broke the hearts of Rider Nation yesterday with his assessment of what happens or might happen next in the nation's capital. But, of course, broke the news yesterday that Sean Burke was relieved of his duties as Vice President of Football Operations, and there's a new old face that is taking over in the nation's capital. Can you tell us what you know?
Yeah, Jim Popp is coming in as an advisor to the football operations department, at least in the short term, to try and right the ship here. My understanding, he's been working in the UFL for the last number of years. You can expect probably an influx of former UFL players to come up north and try and generate or inject some talent into this Red Blacks roster, and then they will continue a search for a more permanent solution. And I think everything's on the table right now. They also need to find a new president for that organization after Adrian Sierra stepped down on Monday. So this goes right to the very top. And Ryan Dinwiddie, of course, has head coach and general manager titles currently. We'll see if he maintains both of those jobs going forward. I don't think he's at jeopardy of being fired, to be entirely frank, just because of the ramifications of the coach's cap and how much investment they've made into him. But I could realistically see a scenario where he gives up that GM title and you bring in somebody to run this organization in a different way and inject what they've been missing. The Jim Popp hire is a nice stopgap because he's experienced. I'm skeptical about it in the long run, if only because he's been out of the league for so long. I mean, it's been, I think, 7 years since he was in the CFL. And the 7 years previous to that, he hadn't had a 500 record for any of the team, or he hadn't had above a 500 record, I should say, for any of the teams that he'd been in charge of. So this is a guy who's had a ton of success in his career, 5 Grey Cup wins, but not necessarily a bunch recently. And this is a much different CFL than the one he left.
Any idea what the dynamic will be between him and Ryan Dinwiddie moving forward? Does Dinwiddie talk and have personnel say? Is Popp going to oversee that, or is that to be determined?
I don't have definitive info on what exactly the hierarchy will be there. I assume it will be something similar to the dynamic between Burke and Dinwiddie, which was Dinwiddie has the final say, but he sends out Burke to shop for the groceries. I think that's probably what will happen with Popp as well, whereas Dinwiddie will focus on the coaching side and Popp will run the football ops and try and bring in new talent, and then the coach gives the thumbs up or the thumbs down. That's typically how it works in those scenarios. And as much as Dinwiddie has that GM title, I think it's worth noting that when he took the job in Ottawa, one of the big reasons why he said it was so attractive to him is that he was getting that title, but he was actually going to have to do less personnel work than he did in Toronto without the title because they were so short-staffed in the front office. That was a selling feature for him at the time. So it's not as if this is Ryan Dinwiddie's roster that he's crafted with his bare hands, right? There has been people, working with him in that front office, putting it together. And Sean Burke obviously takes the fall for that with this firing.
The SportsCage team obviously knows how big of a risk taker that I am. Not. But going to go out on a limb here and suggest that maybe Ottawa isn't going to make the playoffs this year at 0-10. Do you then anticipate, or would you think that a fire sale could be coming? I know that there's not many trades ever in the Canadian Football League, but could you see Ottawa trying to stockpile some assets and maybe moving some players around prior to the trade deadline?
I think it's a possibility. Now, that's tough to pull off in the CFL. It's such a tight league. The finances are what they are. Like, it's tough to make trades here. But I could see a few pieces being flipped. I mean, if I'm the Saskatchewan Roughriders, for example, we talked about Jackson Ford and some of the struggles at safety. Do you give the Red Blacks a call and say, hey, CJ Rivas available? I know he left in free agency. We'd love to have him back, right? Guys like that. I think there will be some kicking of the tires. I wouldn't describe it as a fire sale, just because that dynamic doesn't happen in the CFL, and there's the value of the assets that you can receive back is limited to a certain extent. As much as I'm a big draft guy and I love that aspect of the way this league is run, it's not like the NFL where you're getting a top 10 draft pick and that can change your franchise. A first-round CFL draft pick is very important, but it's not equivalent to what it is south of the border. So acquiring assets is nice, but there's not the same advantage to doing so as there is south of the border.
JC Abbott from 3downnation.com. Before we let you go, you do a phenomenal job of tracking prospects and analyzing what's going to happen through the combines and, of course, right up to CFL draft day. The initial list from the CFL Scouting Bureau, for lack of a better term, came out, and there's some familiar names with players that their fathers were actually in the Canadian Football League. But you saw the list come out. Were there surprises or anything catch you off guard at all?
There's not necessarily any surprises. It's an interesting list. I described it as a less sexy list than the one we've seen the last couple of years. I think it's more lunch players versus stars. The top of the list, of course, is Ty Benefield. That's who you're alluding to with his father, David Benefield, being a longtime CFL player. I'll say this up front. Ty Benefield is a kid that I used to coach out here with the West Side Warriors in Vancouver. So I am very familiar with him. He's a fantastic athlete and is now at LSU. And I think he's almost a lock to be an NFL draft pick. So he's probably not coming up to the CFL anytime soon. But beyond him, there's not a lot of certain NFL guys out there from this draft class, at least at this point. There's a lot of players that have something to prove, that have moved around to different levels of competition and are looking to make a jump, and perhaps they can impress. I think of the number 7 player on the list, Jordan Lassard, who was at Laval, one of the best U Sports cornerbacks I've ever seen, and is now transferred to Colorado State, right? He's completely under the radar when it comes to the NFL, but if he somehow jumps into the starting lineup for Colorado State and impresses as that transfer guy, does he all of a sudden rocket up the charts? I mean, it's very rare that we see a former U Sports cornerback at 7 on an initial Scouting Bureau rankings. He is that good. So there's some intriguing names out there. There's some names that could be added to this list as well as time goes on. Antoine Raymond, the talented Rutgers running back, and Melvin Siani, who's a left tackle for Texas, both could declare early if they have good seasons, and I think they'll be in the NFL conversation as well. And that would put them automatically into the CFL draft if they declare. So there's some names to watch down the stretch if you're a college football fan. But we'll see how it plays out over the next few months when the games start to happen.
I've got 2 questions, but I don't have time for both. Question 1 was going to be who misses the playoffs in the West. Question 2 is going to be if you look at the draft next year, we know that the season is going to be moved up ahead of time, so you'd have to think the draft moves ahead of the NFL draft, which, again, you could have players drafted in both leagues, and that's just an entirely different dynamic. How much different is that going to be? Choose the question that you'd like to answer, JC Abbott.
Well, I'll just flat out say Winnipeg is the team I've got missing the playoffs in the West, and I won't elaborate. And it's going to be very different in terms of the draft. Now, it's not going to be catastrophic by any stretch of the imagination, but personnel people will tell you that this is going to be a very, very challenging change for them to undertake with the way the schedule is moving. They don't like it. And it's going to limit the amount of Canadian rookies that are in training camp and limit their opportunities early in seasons as a result, not only because of NFL opportunities, but some of these U Sports guys where school is still a priority for them because they're not going to make life-changing money in the CFL. They might not be done exams by the time that rookie camp opens, right? So they're going to have to show up late for academic reasons. That's not something we've considered in the past. So lots of moving pieces.
You did it well. I scored it, and I got you down for a perfect A+.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I looked on a lot of A+ papers, never wrote one, but had a lot of friends that did. JC Abbott, appreciate your time as always from 3downnation.com. Enjoy this week that's coming up in the CFL.
Thanks for having me on.
JC Abbott, 3downnation.com. Again, check out his work at 3downnation.com. Of course, Beauty with some great insights into what's happening in the Canadian Football League. We are going to take a break. We've got the sports ticker still to go, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to win tickets to the Riders and Argos this weekend. I'll tell you about it in a moment. This is the Sports Cage. We're streaming at sportscage.com and on 620 CKRM. Well, let's start with CFL news. The Ottawa Red Blacks have appointed longtime CFL executive Jim Popp as a senior football advisor. The move comes a day after the club fired Vice President of Football Operations Sean Burke. Amid an 0-10 start to the season, Popp has spent 29 seasons in the CFL as a coach and front office executive and has been part of 5 Grey Cup champion winning teams. Meantime, in the majors of baseball, 10 games tonight split between the National American and Interleague play. The idle Toronto Blue Jays are a game and a half out of the last American wild card spot. Heading into tonight's action, 2 of the 3 teams the Jays are hoping to catch are on the docket this evening, including the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Los Angeles Angels. The Texas Rangers face the AL Central leading Chicago White Sox. The Jays back on the diamond tomorrow when they'll open a set with the Kansas City Royals. That's what's happening in sports. Find out the latest at sportscage.com or, of course, click on today's sponsor of the show, sasktoday.ca. They are proud to bring you the Sports Cage and, of course, all the news you can handle without getting ink on your fingers. Go to sasktoday.ca. All right, Rider Nation, you have been weighing in on the Prairieland Rentals text line and our YouTube chat. We will get to your comments coming up momentarily following the Riders' setback yesterday in BC. How are they going to do this weekend, though, against the Toronto Argonauts? It's time for SaskTel Pick the Score. Pretty simple. You text us. That's the way to get in at 306-936-6262. Text us what you think the score will be. If it is closest to the actual score every week, you could win a $200 gift card. And just for playing along today, you automatically win 2 tickets to the next Rider home game. You do need to weigh in, though, on what you thought about the game yesterday in BC to get in.
And I need your name. It's hard to pick a winner if I don't have a name.
That's true. Names are good. Welcome to 2026. Pick the score now. 306-936-6262. Riders 6-4 taking on the 5-5 Toronto Argonauts. Coming up, we are going to get to the Riders Coaches Show. We will find out whether or not alarm bells are indeed ringing in Mosaic Stadium. The Riders Coaches Show coming up at 4:30. Josh Donnelly will be joining us from the bowels of Mosaic Stadium. And analyst for the BC Lions, Giulio Caravatta. He'll join us on the other side of news. This is the Sports Cage. You're listening at 620 CKRM and, of course, streaming at sportscage.com. Second last Monday of August is here. That could be a bummer. Or last Monday before back to school begins. That could be a bummer. Or that could be a party happening in the neighborhood. Take your pick. It's Dave Thomas in for Tegan Whitco. The Sports Cage is on this 24th day of August. Lots still to get to, including a chance to send your family to Mexico. We're going to head to Mosaic Stadium for the Riders Coaches Show. That's coming up in just a little bit, plus more chances to pick the score. Right now, my crude math skills tell me that 3-1 is the ratio of you picking the Riders to defeat the Toronto Argonauts on Saturday. Of course, send us your text with a score, 306-936-6262. Just for playing in, you are entered for 2 tickets to the game on Saturday. Also, if you are closest to the right score, is it without going over? I know I want to say that just because the price is right. But if you're closest to the actual score, you'll win a $200 SaskTel gift card.
That's a Gloria question.
Yeah,
I don't know those rules.
I just got all excited thinking that I was like Drew Carey for a minute there. However, I'm OG. Bob Barker is the guy for me.
Absolutely.
But just saying. All right. That's still to come before we get things put away on this Monday afternoon following the 30-16 setback by the BC Lions over your Saskatchewan Roughriders. Pleased to now be joined on the Western Pizza guest hotline. Of course, perfect pizza, generous amount of toppings, and all the Greek favorites you love. It is the analyst for BC Lions Radio, Giulio Caravatta, is joining us. Boy, I love your work, and you know that, or at least I hope you know that. And I want you to analyze what you saw yesterday at BC Place.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello to you in person, but it's nice to talk to you as always. You know what? I think we both would agree. I mean, it was a very good football game. You know, with 2 good football teams that they laid it on the line, and I think we saw elite quarterbacking. Great defense. I think as in all these kind of big games, you always find those 5 or 6 plays that are kind of the difference makers. And I'm sure in Saskatchewan, the frustration lies in some of those penalties because I really, really hurt them at critical times. But overall, I thought the Lions really needed to step up and win this game. I think there was a certain level of desperation in their game. But man, oh man, I can't wait for, another 4 weeks until we see them again. It's just such a great rivalry. It's such a great atmosphere whenever the Saskatchewan Roughriders come to town, and super, super excited to see this season kind of progressed because it's been so good up to this point, and I'm just happy from a personal point of view that the Lions have been able to kind of climb themselves back into contention here.
And that was the narrative that I thought following the game. The BC Lions, Giulio, have now got themselves on a winning streak. You're back up to 500. You got Nathan Rourke back at the helm. What's not to love about this team? Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think they and if I'm being really honest, and it was interesting talking to Nathan Rourke after the game. He wasn't happy. He was not happy with his performance, and I was just like, holy cow! I think he only had 6 incompletions, and I know he really, really struggled with that interception. I think he was really, really frustrated, and he was lucky that he didn't get another one with Josh Woods, who got underneath one of his passes, and it most likely should have been picked off. But I think there's still a lot there, and that's one of the things that probably has been frustrating for the Lions. But I think it's also exciting in the sense that when they kind of really do put it all together, that it's just going to be fun to watch. And again, I know I keep saying this, but when you get elite quarterbacking the way that the Lions in Saskatchewan get it, it's fantastic football to watch.
I'm not going to lie. I made my way down into the bowels of BC Place following the game, and I ended up outside the BC Lions dressing room. I heard there was good food. That's why. But in all honesty, I overheard a conversation between two reporters from Vancouver talking about how the Lions might have got lucky in that win. And I'm like, where does this narrative come from? I think taking advantage of opportunities is maybe what happened. You won a good football game. Am I totally out to lunch?
No, you're not. Exactly. I mean, it was. I think a lot of times too, we always look for the negative, and I agree with you. I mean, it was a great game. Both teams, took advantage of each other's mistakes. Lions were able to create 4 turnovers, and Nathan Rourke, I said, he got away with a couple, but I could say the same about Trevor Harris. Trevor Harris got away with a couple. I think Sankey should have had one. I think Jackson Finley had one go through his hands, and that's part of football, right? That's what makes the game great. And again, I mean, I think that both these teams are teams that you're going to see down the stretch as probably the contenders in the West to go along with Edmonton, who continues to win football games. So, the West, I still believe is still so much can happen in this division, and it's just going to be fun to watch. I mean, again, this year has been just unbelievable for entertainment value. With every game. And so I'm a fan. I love to watch great football. I don't care who it is. I think you'd agree. We saw a very good football game. We move on to the next one.
Speak to the year and a half with Buck Pierce at the helm and as head coach of the BC Lions. This year, I would suggest, way more difficult than anyone could have anticipated. You get kicked out of your building with the World Cup of Soccer. You've got the tumultuous times with your special teams unit that comes under fire a little bit. You've got all the receiver injuries, and then a little bit of buy-in and maybe a little bit of continuity on the defensive side swings things around. How well has Buck Pierce done in managing that all, and how much credit should he take?
That's an excellent point. I agree. Like, even for last year, being a first-year head coach, and then having, going through that beginning part of the season where they were really struggling. The one thing that has been super impressive to me about watching him is that his demeanor has never changed. He's always been really like exactly the same person, through a winning streak as he is through a losing streak. And I think that really, is a very calming influence for this football team. Like, they don't get too high or too low. They just try to stay right in the middle there. And I think one of the things that he's really brought to this team is that resiliency, the idea of fighting through adversity and fighting through injuries and having no excuses about what's in front of you, right? I mean, as you said, like, defensively, this team had a lot of problems early on. They just, had some new pieces, and they were trying to find their way, and they took a real beating there. And obviously with week 2 performance in Saskatchewan, where they just couldn't stop Trevor Harris, they struggled those first few weeks, but they've really kind of come around. And then offensively, they suffered all those injuries to the receivers, and now they're starting to get those guys back. So they're still trying to find their way, but I think Buck has been the perfect guy. I mean, he's a very, very gifted offensive play caller. I think anytime that you have, a guy who understands the quarterback position the way Buck does and sees the game through the quarterback's eyes, I think is an advantage. And Nathan and him really have really struck a really good relationship. And, I just can't, I can't, all the talk about Buck leading into the last few seasons, because, he was a front runner for the Saskatchewan job before Corey Mace got it. All those things that, Buck Pierce is the next guy. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You just don't know what you're going to get. But I think Buck has really settled in nicely as a head coach. And I know the players really respect him, and they play hard for him. And he has that player's mentality. He understands what they go through, and they've really kind of bought into his system.
Giulio Caravatta, outstanding analyst for the BC Lions, joins us. And I know if you're a Cleveland Browns fan right now, you're saying if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got no quarterbacks. If you're the BC Lions, you've got 2 running backs, but there's only one football to go around. Yeah. And finding that balance, how difficult is that with Xander Horvath and James Butler?
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I think that's, that position to me is one of those ones where, you got to allow one guy to kind of get going, get on a roll. And the last few weeks, it has been Xander. I thought Saskatchewan did a very good job, defensively on the running game. Like that, I don't know what the final, I think it was right around 77 yards rushing or something along those lines that they ended up with, but they did a really good job with him. But to your point, they have two running backs, and Xander, the way that he's been playing lately, you have to give him really the kind of the nod as far as, a guy that probably is going to see more of the bulk of carries as we head into the second half of the season. He's 6'3", he's 240. He runs very, very well for a big man. He catches the ball very well. He blocks. He can be a tight end. He can serve a lot of different spots for you. And as you're showing right now, he's their new short yardage guy, and he's done a really good job of that. So, he's you can't have enough depth. Everybody knows that. You're going to have injuries, and that's, I think, one of the other parts of the equation for the Lions that, given what happened early on to them, especially offensively, some of the young guys that got opportunities because of injury have really kind of stepped up. And three of those guys kind of, they jump to mind is Jermaine Jackson got cut at training camp. They had to bring him back, and he's really done a nice job for them. You look at a guy like Nick Senecal, who was really, really good when he was called upon. And now they're getting Nate DeMontenac, who was their first-round draft pick, who had a really, really good training camp, and he's now back in the lineup. So a lot of these guys are getting an opportunity to play and have showed the Lions that, hey, if need be and something else happens, that there's not going to be any kind of drop-off, that you're going to be able to put those guys in without missing a beat. And the same goes for the running back, right? If one guy's not going, you can use the other guys. So it's a good problem to have.
You get a chance to taste the East Division with 3 consecutive in Ottawa and then back-to-back with Montreal. But looking back in the West, Giulio Caravatta, what do you see when you look around the West Division right now?
Wow. I see a lot of parity, and I see still a lot. Like, I think you and I would both agree that if any one of these teams were to suffer an injury to their quarterback, their seasons are going to drastically change. I know Caden Salter did a really nice job for the Lions when he stepped in against Winnipeg and won a big game on the road for them. But if he had to be the starter for the rest of the season, I don't know, what we would get. And so, not that I'm wishing, of course, I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but I think there's still a lot of football left to be played and a lot of things that can still happen. But if they all stay healthy, holy cow, man, every single game is going to be so important heading down the stretch for everybody, and especially when you play within your division. My goodness. So, I just, as far as what happens, and obviously Edmonton has done their part. They've gotten off to a great start, and everyone's going to try to chase them. The Lions, like I said, have been able to win 4 in a row and get themselves back into the hunt. But everybody's right there. How do you discount Winnipeg? How do you discount Calgary? How do you discount any of those teams? They're just talented. They're good football teams. And it's gonna be a pressure-packed last half of the season for everybody, because there's not going to be one game that you can take off. Every single game is gonna be critical for every one of those teams and how they try to make it to the playoffs.
I appreciate you taking so much time for us. I don't want to monopolize it. I do have a couple of questions. First,
No.
I want to get your take on defense. If you were a defensive coordinator right now in the CFL, would you consider double covering tight end for the Rough Riders, Daniel Johnson?
Hey, I have to give him credit. Did you see he avoided that tackle?
Yeah.
That was pretty impressive. That was pretty impressive for the big man. That's athleticism. I'm sorry.
Well,
Yeah,
apparently,
I love Mark Mueller, right? I've got a bit of a man crush on Mark because he's such a good guy, and I think he is going to be such a fantastic head coach one day. And I just love the creativity too. Like when he goes out there, I think everybody just thought, oh yeah, he's just a decoy, but they threw it to him. I love it. And this is being creative, right? Like now you've set everybody up. Like they're going to have to try to figure that, hey, if he goes out there, that's a catch and run for a first down. That's awesome.
He apparently did play tight end. He told me in high school. There is some high school tight end in him, but he didn't even crack a smile after it. I couldn't believe it. I thought for sure. Yeah, nothing. Stone cold.
Nothing? Wow. Yeah, that I mean, I was super impressed. I mean, you could tell that, he's an athlete. For a big man like that to move his feet like that, that's pretty impressive.
All right,
pretty impressive.
Last thing, I want to get you out on this again. I appreciate your time again breaking
no problem,
this down.
buddy.
But
anytime.
When you look at, we talked about the West Division and how basically anything can happen. But when you look at the BC Lions and you talk about their ceiling, I don't think that it's anywhere near close to reaching that. What has to happen for the BC Lions to continue to progress in the way that they have the last 4 weeks especially?
Well, if I'm being totally honest, I really think that one of the things that needs to change or needs to get better, offensively and defense. I mean, like I get, Nathan and he's not being happy and stuff, but they're still putting up over 400 yards of offense, and defensively they're doing their. If I'm being totally honest, I have to say that my biggest concern would be special teams. You mean that they're giving up way too much yardage, and they're not getting anything out of their return game that really needs to happen to be a complete team, right? And in this league, like, you need to, and Saskatchewan's a perfect example of this, especially last year, when you have injuries on offense and you're not firing at all. You need your defense and you need your special teams to step up and make plays and get a return. Get yardage, get an explosive play. If you can get a touchdown on a return, that's fantastic. But you know what I mean? Like, you need to get 2 out of your 3 aspects of your game to be going. And so for me, offensively and defensively, this team is right there. They just need a little bit more out of their special teams. They and I think that I want to say it's almost a 10-yard difference between the Lions and the first place team as far as average starting field position. So, it's you're putting a lot of pressure on your offense when you have to roll them out every single series and you're starting on your 32 or your 33. It's just too hard. So you need an explosive return to get you to the 45 or 50, where if you get a first down, that you're in field goal range and you're going to get points. And so if I'm being honest, that's what I would say is that the one thing that needs to get better for the Lions if they're going to be an elite team and be a contender going down the stretch.
I think it's funny, not funny and ha-ha, but funny in that Seven McGee has been out since game number 1, right? The returner that I think is premier in the league. But the other end of that coin, I'm really curious, and again, sorry to build on this, but yesterday I was at this stadium way too early, and I don't know what to read into this, but Carl Meyer was out with a chair on the field, and he was putting the ball on the tee, and he was consistently kicking 63-yard field goals. Now, I get it. Sean White's been in the game for 18 years. He said, you know what, when the field goal post moved to the back, that could spell the end of me. But should I read anything into that? This back, the punter is out kicking in the pregame warm-up before anybody else arrives at the stadium?
Well, here's the thing. I think that one of the things that, and Sean would admit to this, like, what would Sean White's max be if he had to kick you'd probably be looking at what, 53, 54, maybe 55? So I think what you see in Carl is that Carl, if need be, if they needed, hey, we the ball's in the 55, we got to try a 62-yard field goal. You got to trot him out there. At least he's, practiced it and is capable of going up there and maybe making it. I don't know what the percentages would be, but at least he gives you a chance.
True.
So, that's why I think you see him and trying to work on that stuff before games, and I think he would be a last minute resort as far as having to kick a field goal. But I've wondered that myself, because I spent a lot of time watching the kickers prior to a game warm up and see where they're at as far as what their length is and what their max would be. And I often think because there's been a few scenarios where, hey, you've last kick of the game. Was it Blanchard the other day in Edmonton who made that 57-yarder he walked off with a 57-yarder? And I thought to myself, what would the Lions do in that situation? Right? So At least Buck is trying to think about it, saying, hey, listen, if we do get to that point, that Carl at least is, rehearsed it a little bit for himself.
Well, I appreciate your time. Are you heading east? Are you going to be there for 2 weeks with the team?
Yeah, we're heading. We're leaving, I think, on Saturday, and then play Sunday, and then we're going to stay in Ottawa, I think, until Thursday, and then head to Montreal for the game in Montreal, and then fly back home Friday night. So get the chance to spend some time in Ottawa, which I'm looking forward to, and it should be good. I'm actually really looking forward to obviously getting to Ottawa, but I really want to see Montreal in person. Just having watched them on TV, the way they play the game has been pretty impressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing them in person.
Well, make sure you get Luke to text you the place of his pizza place in Ottawa. It's so good that he puts the pizza in shower caps to bring home on the aircraft, but we won't get into that.
Well, listen, I've got something for Luke too. I've got relatives there, and I found a great Italian sandwich place that makes the best veal and meatball subs around. So I may have to exchange some information with Luke and you guys, so you guys can go visit that place as well.
Always appreciate the pre-scout. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Giulio
I appreciate it, buddy.
Caravatta, BC Lions radio analyst. Appreciate your time. Of course, the Lions defeated the Saskatchewan Roughriders yesterday. The Leos, if you missed it, won 4 in a row now, and of course are headed out to their Eastern road trip where they'll take on Ottawa this week before back-to-back games with Montreal starting in Montreal. The Western Pizza Guest Hotline, perfect pizza, generous amount of toppings, and all the Greek favorites you love. Coming up, we are going to get to our clutch performer as well. Tell you how you and your family can join us in Mexico. I say join us like I'm going. You could go to Mexico. We'll explain that, plus your clutch performer and the Riders Coaches Show before 5. It's here on the Sports Cage. We're live on 620 CKRM and, of course, streaming at sportscage.com. Well, I've done what they call scooping yourself, essentially, when it comes to the clutch performer, brought to you by Kellen Solar. You know they can help with your livestock opportunity, but now book your solar quotes for your home, farm, or cabin. Save money with the local company, Kellen Solar in Lumsden. And it's Dave Thomas in for Tegan Whitco on this Monday. And should I just go?
Yeah, you've gotten yours out there already.
Yeah. Great 17-yard reception from Daniel Johnson, the offensive lineman for your Saskatchewan Roughriders. As you heard me allude in my play call, it was pretty cool that they went ahead and they moved him in motion pre-snap from his tight end spot to the wideout spot on the near side of the field. Who would have ever thought that you'd have to cover a big offensive lineman? The BC Lions should have thought that, as he goes ahead and takes a Trevor Harris reception for 17 yards. Doesn't crack a smile, does break a tackle, and then when the Riders went short yardage 2 plays later, the big boys came out like Devin Adams, so on and so forth, giving them a pat on the shoulders and stuff for his catch. But a big man catch is always fun, and the Riders executed one to perfection yesterday in Vancouver.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For my clutch performer, we're going to the Little League World Series, where Canada has pulled off their first win against Panama on a wild play at the plate in extras. So bunt, pitcher grabs the ball, tosses it to the catcher, catcher bobbles it, kid running from third slides in, knocks the ball loose. Canada wins 1-0 in extras.
The old safety squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So the ball gets put down, and unfortunately the catcher for Panama, unfortunate, just doesn't hold on to it. But
yeah, the
ball drops, runner takes off for home, and then away you go.
There you go. So keeps Canada alive. If they lose another game here, they are out of the bracket. And it looks like they will be facing, the Asia Pacific team from Korea, who they lost to in game 1.
Ouch. So, they're tough.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But hey, they got a win. Actually, they also beat Australia for a little while ago as well. I think their website's messy.
It's confusing.
I'm trying to read scores. It's not working together. It is what it is.
Well,
but hey, we got the win.
We do have Josh Donnelly coming up on the Riders Coaches Show in a moment. The offensive assistant, I can't say that, offensive assistant for the Riders will be joining us in just a moment. But to tie that together, by the way, for the clutch performer, just quickly, did you see the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be playing in Williamsport next year, should there be a Major League Baseball season? They call it the Little League Classic, and what they do is they have 2 Major League teams go and play a game there. So Toronto will be playing a home game in Pennsylvania next year as they get to take on the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, I did see that because it was the Brewers and Braves this year.
Yeah,
who did it? So That's fun. I love that they do that, right? And when you've got 180 some games or 60, whatever it is, when you've got that many games, yeah, you can sprinkle in a couple fun ones like this. But I even saw, like, in kids' games, you have to do the handshake line at the end of the games, right? That's mandatory. I saw that the Brewers and Braves, they went past and did high fives as the handshake line, like you did when they're kids.
That's cool, right?
So I'm like, it's those little things that remind you, hey, this is a kid's game that we get to play for a living, right? I appreciate those things.
Should I risk blowing up the Prairieland Rentals text line and read you a hot take out of Toronto today?
Ooh.
So the Toronto Blue Jays are off. They lost their series in the Bronx. They went 3-3 on their road trip. So they won the series in Tampa Bay. They won game 1 in New York and then lost the final 2. They lost Saturday and Sunday. They're now a game and a half out of a wild card spot. Idle tonight, open a series with Kansas City tomorrow. What was the difference in the Saturday-Sunday game from the games earlier in the week where they had won the series earlier against the Yankees? What was different?
That is the question.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was in the lineup on Saturday and Sunday. And, of course, his struggles continue at the plate. And, again, he's putting up good numbers, just not the superstar numbers you would expect with a contract. And I'm sorry to dictate that a contract would go ahead and bring about expectation, but that's the reality of professional sports.
It is, yeah.
And so dropping him down to 7-8 in the order has been bantied about. John Schneider has said no, but that's the hot take out of Toronto. That Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the one that's setting the team back. Good luck trying to sell that, but
yeah, just like how Trevor Harris is angry at his teammates.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're telling us that stuff on the internet isn't true. Wow. Who would have thunk it? That's your clutch performer. Of course, I can't wait to see what the YouTube chat and the Prairieland Rentals text line at 306-936-6262 has to say. The Clutch Performer is brought to you by Kellen Solar. Hang tight. We got to go to Mosaic Stadium. The Riders Coaches Show is coming up next with Josh Donnelly. Hang tight. That is on the way here on the Sports Cage. We're streaming at sportscage.com and on your radio at 620 CKRM.
It's time to head out on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline. It is the Saskatchewan Roughriders Coaches Show presented by Steelcraft Doors and the Rider Foundation. The all-new 50-50 is here for you to cash in and win. We're pleased to be joined by the Saskatchewan Roughriders offensive assistant coach Josh Donnelly in his second season with the club. Josh, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess the first question that maybe we should get some clarification on is I don't hear any alarm bells or anything in the background, so they're not sounding at Mosaic Stadium, are they?
Absolutely not. No.
You had a chance?
No, everyone's just back to work. Yeah.
You had a chance to obviously dissect the film and see what happened in BC yesterday. What did you take away from that look?
Some things to correct. Obviously wasn't, the outcome we wanted and, our best effort. But, the guys fought hard, a lot of things that we can be proud of. And just like I said, like some things to correct. And, we just have to get better from it and learn from it and continue to just trust in our process and get back to our process of getting better every day and putting our best foot forward as the next opportunity comes.
The one thing that my phone blew up after the game, and again, this is something that I can't see with the naked eye from the booth, and you're sitting very close to where I'm sitting in venues around the Canadian Football League, was perhaps some frustration starting to show on the sideline. Did you sense any of that at all?
Well, like you said, I'm not on the sideline, but talking to the guys after the game, and obviously guys are passionate, and everybody, we want the same thing. We want what's best for the team, and guys get competitive for sure. But I think whether or not it would, I don't know if frustration is the right word as much as just it's competitive energy, and it's the passion for what we do and the team and the rest of the group, and I think everybody just wants the best for the group. So whether the emotions were getting hot, I can't actually speak to because I wasn't down there, but I know that guys do care a lot about this team and they just want the best for the group.
When you mention competitive energy, Coach, is that positive and negative?
I think it could be at times, but I do think that you need that, and that guys, thrive, and it pushes guys to get better. And though it could be uncomfortable maybe in the moment, I think that ultimately, because the guys around our group, they have the right intentions. I think it is good, and it's something that we use as a positive, as almost a fuel for continued growth and for us to continue to get better.
And do you see the growth continuing week over week? Because you get to work with these players and identify and dissect what you see on film all the time.
Absolutely. And I mean, in the heat of the moment when maybe there's an incompletion or, we don't get the absolute result that we're looking for, it's hard to see. But then you go back and you look at the film and you compare over week to week. There's definitely incremental growth going on. And there, like I said earlier, that we have a process and we're sticking to that process. And the guys believe in that process. And we just have to keep fighting and scratching and clawing and find ways to get wins.
Josh Donnelly is our guest on the Riders Coaches Show this week. Coach, appreciate you taking some time for us here this afternoon, a day after being out in Vancouver with the BC Lions. We talked about your takeaways from that game, but as a whole, can you tell me what you do week to week? Because I know how much work you do in the film room and making sure that the team is prepared.
Yeah, I have a lot of behind-the-scenes roles, whether it's inputting data into the film or preparing the scout team or the look team for practice, and then little, side projects on the side. And I always joke that I'm the assistant to the offensive coordinator. So kind of whatever Mark needs, I'm just, his assistant and ready to take on that task, whatever it is on a week-to-week basis.
Full Dwight Schrute on that. I appreciate that. So, Coach Donnelly, when you're working with Mark Mueller, what's that relationship like? I know that there's already the camaraderie and bond that comes with being alumni of the same university programs, but what has it been like working with and for Mark?
I'm often reminded how much I don't know. I'm very grateful for being able to work with him, just because I feel like I'm learning something every single day. And every week I'm excited for the task at hand, because I know that it's a different challenge and we're going to have, I'm going to be learning something new this week. So it's been very cool working with him and then the rest of our offensive staff. I think we have a really, really good group, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it.
The resume that you built at the University of Regina, right, progressing up to the offensive coordinator level and then making the jump to the professional ranks, do you ever look back and say, wow, this has happened very quickly for someone as young as I am?
Yeah, at times, and I look back to my time as an offense coordinator there, and like I said, like, because of how much I'm learning here, you have those regrets of, man, I wish I would have done this with the Rams, and I wish we could have done this better. And but I feel like that's going to happen every year, and you're going to learn so much every year and every stop that you're in. And like I said, I'm very fortunate to be able to learn those things and to be able to continue to get better and take these lessons and continue to apply them, on a week-to-week basis.
Pretty cool how you stepped into quarterback room last year, where you had the likes last year of Trevor Harris and Jake Mayer and Tommy Stevens and Jack Cohn all there, and the dynamic shifted a little bit with Jake, of course, moving on. But what was that like the first time you stepped into that room with proven CFL veterans that had been there and done that?
I cannot say enough about that room. Like, those guys are awesome. Last year and this year, Trevor kind of leading the group, but then the rest of the room, I mean, not only are they all really, really good guys, they come to work every day. They're total professionals, and I'm learning as much from them as I am from anyone else. So it's a blessing to be a part of that.
Can you tell me what it was like? Because, of course, the age dynamic is something you can't run away from. And I know that Trevor Harris is going to be pounding his fist on his dashboard as he's listening to this on the radio saying, age is just a number. But again, Trevor Harris is the oldest guy around when you consider that he is older than yourself and Mark Mueller. That can be an interesting dynamic, can't it? Absolutely.
I mean, But what Trevor is awesome about, and talking about age and everything, he wants to get better. So he doesn't care, if it's his offense coordinator's same age as him or his offensive assistant is 10 years younger than him or whatever. Like, if he can get better, or if somebody can coach him, he wants to be coached and he wants to get better. So I really appreciate that about him, and I'm really grateful because I get to learn from him on a daily basis and see his process and see the way that he attacks every week as a real professional, and the things that he's picked up over the years, because he brings things to this offense that whether it's little details or different little keys in quarterback play that it makes us better, and everybody's very open to that. And I think that's what's really cool about that room is everybody gets a little bit of a voice and a little bit of a say in the offense, and it's not just Mark's offense, and he's very vocal about that, and he wants everybody to have a say in it and to be a part of it. And if you have an opportunity or an ability to make the offense better, then they're all ears for that.
Josh Donnelly is our guest. He is the offensive assistant coach for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's all brought to you on the Riders Coaches Show for Steelcraft Doors and the Riders Foundation 50/50. Coach, before we do move on from the quarterbacks, 2 quick questions. Number 1, the ability to be coached and the want to be coached isn't necessarily always a given, no matter what level you are at and coaching. How special is that then to this group that you get to work with?
Oh, I mean, it's awesome, and I'm super grateful being a young guy that, they, still listen to me and, give me the time of day to, help them. And my only goal is just to get those guys better and get them ready for game day. So I think after a couple weeks last year, they kind of, gave me their trust a little bit, and I continue to grow with that. And it makes coming to work every day, a lot of fun because of that room.
And the final thought then is, how do you see the development of Jack Cohn and Tommy Stevens and Braden Shager moving forward? They don't get a lot of reps in practice. Obviously, they do a ton of work behind the scenes. How is their growth happening, and how do you evaluate through the course of a season when they don't get much playing time and or practice reps to throw the football?
Yeah, I think all 3 of them, their development and progression is coming along nicely. Like I said, that room really takes pride in coming to work every day. So those guys put in more time in the film room than anyone else, and so they're getting better just being in there with Trevor, being in there with Mark, learning the game plan on a daily basis, preparing like they're going to be the starter every week, and I think they all take pride in that. And then it's watching the scout team, and it's watching those guys when they do get their reps in practice, that are they making the progress, are they able to take what they're learning in the film room and on the whiteboard and in the playbook and be able to apply it on the field, which I'm happy with the progress thus far, and going to continue to push those guys to keep having a sense of urgency and development and getting better.
Definitely want to ask you about the receivers, and I guess we start with no bigger receiver than Daniel Johnson coming up with that reception in BC yesterday. Not sure it was on my bingo card, but he didn't even crack a smile after making that catch, the big offensive lineman. When that play came in, I don't know what he was thinking, but how do you coach that to an offensive lineman who may not have caught a patch for a while?
Well, DJ played tight end in college, so before he went to Purdue. So he had a bit of experience there, and honestly, I mean, I can't say enough about that guy as an athlete. Like, when he got the ball in his hands, he looked like he had done it a million times before. He was a total natural, and when we had done it in practice, it looked just as smooth. So it gets the guys fired up when they see an O-lineman catch the ball, and it was a lot of fun seeing that happen.
Obviously, then maybe went on to inspire some of the young receivers that you've got on the roster right now. Of course, it's been a real position of flux over the last 3-4 weeks. Tell me about the receivers that the Saskatchewan Roughriders have and how you see their growth, their development, and their integration into the game plan week after week.
It has really just been awesome seeing the next man up mentality in that room. There's never really been any hesitation. I mean, you have guys like Shafe and Sam, they go down for a week or a couple weeks, and it's hard. Those guys are amazing players and hard to replace, and so it's been really cool seeing the growth of the young guys and their ability to kind of step in and take on the task at hand and not really flinch. And they're even when they're in a backup role or in a practice rush role or whatever it is, they're approaching the week to week game plan and prep week as if they're starting, which is really, really cool to see out of young guys that you maybe wouldn't expect that out of in their professional careers. So can't say enough about that room and the job that Coach Mark McDaniels has done with them and the culture that they have in there for their work, and they take pride in their work, and it's really cool to see.
Do want to single out one receiver though, Coach Donnelly, in Dylan Jette, and when he was drafted by the team, looking at his film on YouTube, I was like, wow, this guy could be real special moving forward. He's got a lot of tools. And again, that's my untrained eye. Unfortunately for him, he had to sit out most of training camp and the first almost half of the season battling through an injury, which he seems to have gotten over. How have you seen him start to grow within the offense of a CFL offense and a Canadian offense in a game that he hasn't played in a while, but also stepping in and even getting some starts now?
The coolest thing about that story was, being hurt all of training camp in the first, whatever it was, 5 or 6 weeks. He was, like I said earlier, preparing as if almost he was the starter. Like, he was learning the playbook for the first time, but he was spending as much time in the film room and as much time, going over the playbook as anyone else. And it's not an easy task to do when you're not on the field actually repping it, and you're not getting the results of catching and running and doing all that sort of stuff. So it was really cool to see the discipline he had there as a guy who was just drafted. He stayed focused, really committed to, hey, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to be ready to go. And when I am healthy, I'm going to be take advantage of the opportunity. And obviously he's doing that. So couldn't be more pumped for him, and excited to see him just continue to get better.
Coach Donnelly, don't want to take up a ton of your time. The rapid round, if you will, obviously being a Saskatchewan guy and very proud of it. You win a Grey Cup championship in your first year as a CFL coach. Was it what you expected it to be growing up, with the reaction of the fans and the entire province?
And more. I mean, it was unbelievable. The success of last year, the kind of the run at the end of the season, and then celebrating afterwards, just with the team and the support we got from the city, it was really cool.
Did you have fun with the cup? Did you have an opportunity to do something special with it?
Yeah, I had a day with it. Took it to the family and showed a couple friends and all that sort of stuff, and enjoyed that. So yeah, another really cool memory that I'll appreciate for a long time.
Didn't have Cheerios or cereal out of it or anything like that?
No, I didn't do that. No.
That probably was wise after the other things that I'd seen with the cup. With
yeah, I got it a little late, so I wasn't drinking anything out of there at that point.
Meatballs, poutine, yeah, something else. Coach, again, really appreciate you taking time for us on the Coaches Show. It's a pleasure to watch you every day at practice. Again, when you're going through the cards with the show team and making sure everything is set, and then watching what you do on game day, it's truly spectacular from the outside looking in, and I hope you're having a lot of fun with it.
Well, I appreciate that. It has been a ton of fun, so thanks for having me.
There you go. Coach Josh Donnelly of your Saskatchewan Roughriders joining on the Riders Coaches Show for Steelcraft Doors and the Rider Foundation 50/50. We're going to take a break and come back with more on the Sports Cage in a moment. This is the Sports Cage at sportscage.com and on 620 CKRM. No alarm bells going off at Mosaic Stadium. That's good news from the Coaches Show, of course, brought to you by Steelcraft Doors and the Rider Foundation 50/50. If you get your 50/50 ticket now for Saturday's game, you're also entered for a Mexico family escape return flights from Saskatchewan to Mazatlan, Mexico. 7 nights at the Rio Emerald Bay, and the package is for 2 adults and 2 kids all inclusive, or take $5,000 cash. Get your tickets at riders5050.ca. That's riders5050.ca. As it's time to head out in the Western Pizza Guest Hotline, we have got a problem. Dan Kraft joining us from Croft Electric. And you know what? Very often my wife tells me to stay in my lane. But I listened to the Sports Cage on Friday, and you did an amazing job. Like, I don't know what you're doing on 5 on Saturday when the Riders take on the Argos. But now
well, thank you.
It's given me renewed confidence in my electrical abilities. And maybe I shouldn't have those. That's the situation.
Well, thank you. It was fun keeping Barney's seat. Well, I guess I wasn't in Barney's seat. I was kind of in Sharky's seat that he would normally be in because he was in Barney's seat. But it was kind of fun being on there, and thank you for that. It was a good time. Now, I thought you were going to go with my prediction that I put on for yesterday's game, which I was way out to lunch. But, yeah.
Trust me, looking back at the Prairieland Rentals text line, you were not alone. There was a lot of people caught off guard by that. But, we all get caught off guard with situations, whether it's in our personal or professional lives, and mitigating the risk, I think, is the best way that we can go. And when it comes to Croft Electric and your preferred customer program, that really fits in hand, doesn't it?
That's exactly it. Everybody has that. We got a guy. Well, we're your guy. Your guy and your girl. Your person for electrical. So, in the preferred program, does that. What it does is gives you a discount on material and a discount on labor. Priority booking gets us out there. Lets us see your service, your electrical service, whether it be on the farm, in your business, or at your home. We get ahead of some things because we'll know what kind of panel you have, what kind of system you have in place, so that next time we come out when there is a problem, we can be way more cost effective and we can get it fixed quickly.
Dan, I'm kicking myself right now. I can't remember a gentleman that came up and introduced myself, and he had you come out to work on his farm. and I'm sorry that I can't remember because I'm probably going to run into this gentleman of the game again on Saturday. But when I think of electrical work helping me out, I think of those frozen water bowls in the winter. But he was talking, no. Like, we had to go ahead and get our operation set up in case we needed to do some drying of seed. We had so many other applications that we had. And I guess you're the expert, so you know what you do and you do it right.
Well, that's exactly it. And get us out right now. I mean, we probably have some listeners that are probably sitting in combines right now, doing harvest and starting to think about what they're going to do with all that grain, and get us over there. Let us help you. Let's take that electrical off your plate, right? Like, you're a good farmer, you're a good rancher, whatever it is. Like, get us out now, get us ahead, let us fix up so you don't have those problems with those water bowls, so you can sleep through the winter so that you're confident that there's not going to be a problem and your cow's going to have water all winter long.
How can we find out more? How can we sign up?
Well, sign up. The easiest way is check us out on the web at www.croftelectric.com. There's contact us page there. You can get a quote there, and of course you can sign in to our preferred customer program. There's a little tab right at the top of the website. Follow us on all those socials. Our social media team does a great job of posting some Friday funnies and Tip Tuesdays, so we can stay ahead of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the regular workday times, give us a call. Talk to Amy, 306-586-1333. She's an amazing job juggling in and squeezing people in for appointments.
There you go. Dan Croft, thanks so much for this. Anytime you want to come in and have a chair in the studio, you are always welcome. I still can't remember green, white, and black. They all do something different, apparently.
They do. You guys have a great rest of your show and a great Monday.
There you go. Dan Croft joining us from Croft Electric. Time to get into your Sports Cage ticker.
It's time for the Sports Ticker, brought to you by Extreme Hockey and Sport, 1425 McIntyre Street, the Cooperator Center, Moose Jaw Temple Garden Center, and online at extremehockey.net.
All right, quick update for the CFL. Ottawa Red Blacks have appointed longtime CFL executive Jim Popp as a senior football advisor. He takes over and is going to oversee the operation as, of course, the Red Blacks in transition after firing their president and vice president in the last couple of days. Major League Baseball, Toronto Blue Jays are off tonight. They're a game and a half out of the wild card spot. The teams they're chasing are on the field tonight, so the Jays will be watching intently before they open up a series with the Kansas City Royals at the Dome tomorrow night. That is your Sports Cage ticker. Coming up after 5, we say hi to Darian Durant. It is Double Talk with Doubles. That's on the way. Plus, if you missed it, we celebrated flag football and the bronze medal winning team from Canada in the men's IFAF World Championship that was held last week in Germany. We will talk with the defensive coordinator of Saskatchewanian. That's all coming up before 6. This is the Sports Cage at 620 CKRM and streaming at sportscage.com. Monday edition of the Sports Cage rolls on. Second last Monday of August. Yes, I broke the bad news earlier this afternoon. But hey, school starts next week. For some. Most starts after the long weekend. I'm very well aware of that. What I wasn't aware of is that I got my dates mixed up on the weekend. The Jays did win 1 game out of 3 in the Bronx. The game they won was Saturday. So Vladdy Guerrero Jr. was in the lineup, thanks to Dale and the texter on the Prairie Land Rentals text line at 529 for pointing that out, that the Jays lost Friday, Sunday, but did win Saturday. Vladdy Guerrero Jr. was in on Saturday and Sunday. And again, if you're wondering what this is all about, the hot take out of Toronto was that Vladdy was in for the 2 losses. Vladdy was in for one of the 2 losses. And so the question is, what do you do with him in the lineup if that's the problem? But maybe it's not a problem. Both, though, are suggesting and agreeing that maybe moving him down to the order gets him 1 less at bat a game. But again, thanks to Dale and the 529 texter for getting in on this afternoon. Big news in the CFL today. Jim Popp is back in the league, going to be working with the Ottawa Red Blacks. We'll discuss that coming up, as well as more on the way, including a conversation with the bronze medalist from the IFAF World Men's Flag Football Championship, Joel Lipinski. If you missed it on our countdown to kickoff yesterday, we'll have that conversation for you coming up before 6 o'clock. In the meantime, though, it is time to go down and talk quarterbacking and more with our favorite from the Plaza of Honor. Yes, he's Darian Durant.
It's time for Double Talk with Saskatchewan Rough Rider legend Darian Durant. Double Talk is brought to you by Dutch Agriculture. Inspect your openers now with Dutch Agriculture's On Farm for You program, so you're not caught off guard in the spring.
Darian Durant. Back to school has already started in the South, hasn't it already?
Yes, it has. We're actually going on week 3 now, so we've been going for a second. I heard you just mention that majority of the schools there start after Labor Day, so I know it's been a long summer for a lot of parents out there.
I was just leaving that there. So did you do the back-to-school shopping thing and stuff? How involved were you with your kids in that?
Yeah, I lead the way. I don't like to label myself a fashion icon or anything like that, but I'm into fashion a little bit. So I like to get the kids dressed up, have them looking nice, get them some nice shoes, all that good stuff. So I lead the way and I love it.
So the 6 number 3 pencils that you needed and the 2 red plans and that didn't fall under your heading, did it?
Yeah, it did. It actually did. My wife, she just turns that stuff over to me, man. She doesn't have the patience, and I don't mind, right? But it's a lot different than when we grew up, right? We go to school with a notebook and a pencil and, maybe a 3-ring binder or something. But now these kids need some of everything. It's crazy.
Oh, you're not kidding me. And taking the eraser from Troy who sat in the aisle opposite, yeah, that's what it was all about. I don't want to say that we went back to school, but the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Darian, definitely learned some lessons in a 30-16 setback in BC yesterday. What did you see from the game?
Yeah, you know what, man? I don't think the Riders played that bad. I just think it was a game full of mistakes. They had so many opportunities. They're about to score on numerous occasions inside BC's 30-yard line. You have a couple interceptions by Trevor. You have a huge fumble by Johnny Johnson as they're going down right before the half that could cut the lead down a little bit. So, they're right there, man. I don't think BC did so much offensively that the DBs or the defense has a lot to worry about. I just think it's the mistakes. And even though it's a part of the game, I wouldn't look at this loss and say that BC just beat down Saskatchewan. I just look at it as Saskatchewan made so many mistakes and just couldn't overcome it. But if they score on any of those possessions where they get inside BC's territory, then we may be having a different conversation today.
Are those mistakes concerning for a veteran championship team?
I think so. I mean, the thing you don't want to do is turn the ball over and take at least 3 points off the board, right? I mean, you have to be extra cautious when you get on that side of the field. And, I think that Trevor knows that. Sometimes you get caught up in the environment, the situations, and things don't really register on time, especially on that first interception. You rarely see Trevor just throw the ball up for grabs in situations like that. I think they kind of surprised him a little bit with that zero coverage. And he and the receiver weren't on the same page, but he doesn't make a lot of mistakes with just throwing the ball up for grabs. So I definitely think he'll, put that in his mental Rolodex and make sure that doesn't happen again. But, when you're in a big time Western dogfight like this one was, whenever you're moving the ball like that, you get an opportunity to put 3 points on the board. You have to take advantage of it.
Darian Durant, obviously the interception gets hung on the quarterback, but you alluded to it, and I thought it was pretty bang on. Seeing the game live, sometimes you don't get all the angles from television, but it's not always the quarterback's fault, is it?
Yeah, I mean, type of miscommunication, guys not being on the same page could lead to a disaster. And sure, they talked about, if they were to get zero coverage, what adjustments needed to be made. But I think in this situation, things just happen so fast. Look, BC plays a lot of off coverage, and when they do blitz, they don't just line up in it so the quarterback can see it. They walk into it. They make sure that they kind of disguise it. So, I mean, it was just a split-second decision from Trevor trying to give, I think it was Keyshawn Johnson, just trying to give him a shot at it, and they just weren't on the same page, and you have to give TJ Lee credit. The veteran made a big-time play in a crucial situation.
After the game, my phone blew up for one of two things. One, trying to encourage Luke and I to try out a different sushi place the next time we're in Vancouver. And probably the one that was maybe more talkative and more probably apropos to this conversation is the fact that Trevor Harris looked frustrated. We didn't see it live. There was some shots on him from TV where he visibly was showing some emotion. What do you read into that?
Yeah, he did look frustrated, and I think it's more so of just not being on the same page. He's a timing thrower. He's a guy that needs his receivers to be where they're supposed to be on time. And both interceptions it didn't happen that way. Like I said, the first one to Keyshawn Johnson, he threw it up for grabs a little bit, and maybe he thought Keyshawn was going to break inward or be ready for a jump ball, and he just wasn't. And then the second interception. The receiver just didn't fight to get inside position. Trevor's has his head down the middle of the field, just trying to make sure he doesn't tip off where he's going with the ball immediately. And then you could see the receiver just stop and allow DB to kind of get inside and fight for that inside position. And he made a play. Kudos to the DB for jumping that route, but as a receiver, you can never, ever, ever give up on a play, especially when you have an in-breaking route. You have to fight back to the ball for your quarterback, and it just didn't happen on that play.
So explain to me what the psyche of a quarterback is then. Obviously, Trevor is the ultimate competitor, and I don't think you play professional sports if you're not the ultimate competitor. But take me inside the psyche of knowing that things have broken down and have gone wrong and haven't worked out the way that you wanted them to.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think you have to, sit down with some of your veteran guys who are your playmakers, your Samuel Emulus, your Keyshawn Johnson, guys like that. And I think he has to, target those guys a little bit more. You can't afford to, try to force the ball to a receiver who you don't have super good chemistry with. There are times and places where if a play's drawn up with a new receiver and you want to take your shot at getting them the ball, get them some touches early to kind of get into a rhythm of things, that's one thing. But, with the injuries that the Riders have at the receiver position, you definitely have to get to your main guys and say, look, man, if I have to give you 15 targets, then so be it, 15 apiece. But I'm looking for you guys. You guys have to make sure that you where I need you to be. And, let's try to get this thing back in order because, when you give young guys a chance and they mess up and you throw interceptions because of it, then as a veteran, man, you kind of lose that confidence a little bit. And I'm not saying that this is what's happening, but I'm saying that when the game gets tight and you need a play, you need to make sure you're looking at your big-time guys because you can't afford, for what happened in BC, for a receiver to give up on a play and let a DB get inside for an interception. That just can't happen.
As a veteran and a leader, Darian, how important was it to either not display or maybe to display your emotions in a football game?
I mean, sometimes you can't help it. I mean, it's just, he doesn't throw a lot of, and Trevor, he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions as is. So, when he gets two in a game and then it happens where you see a receiver not fighting back or not being in position. Sometimes you just can't hold it in. You have to let go. It's so hard, especially in such a warrior sport like football, to just sit there and just look straight-faced and hold in your emotions at all times. You just can't do that. I mean, he's done a great job of being poised and always seeming to keep his emotions under control. But, it's so competitive out there. You want to win every time. And then when you make mistakes, which Trevor rarely does, these things start to compound a little bit. Frustration is going to set in. And I think that's exactly what we saw.
Obviously, from, again, what I was pointed out to on the phone, aside from ordering more squid, was the fact that Trevor really, I don't want to say internalized it, because that's the wrong thing. Like, he didn't go and get in the face of the receivers or make a big deal about it on the sidelines. He just kind of went about his way and reset himself. Is that what you would have done as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, sometimes you forget the camera's on you, right? And, as soon as he threw the interception, you can see him take his helmet off and just let out a yell because he's frustrated, right? But, sometimes you just have to leave it up to the coaches. And Marquay McDaniel, he's been in the receiver coach, he's been in that situation numerous times, and Trevor understands that. So sometimes you just let the coach do his job and let the receivers know what's going on. And it's not up to Trevor. Needs to just sit there and get his composure back, and I think that's what he did a great job of. I mean, if you look at the rest of the game, he made some throws to close close out that game. So I think he did a great job of just letting his frustration out quickly, but regrouping, getting his composure back, and you still have to go out there and play regardless of what happened. There's still time on the clock, and you still feel win. So we're all human, man, and it's so hard to just keep a straight face every single possession, especially when you're making mistakes.
So does it ever get heated? Like, I can't imagine you and Chris Getzlaff ever raising your voice to one another just because you guys are that tight.
No, that's happened now. That's happened. It's happened a couple times, actually. I mean, you get fired up. You're expecting one thing, and sometimes in the heat of the moment or when a guy's running full speed, he may see something else and decide to do something else, and you're just not on the same page. So that's why during the week we spend so much time together trying to go over every single scenario possible that the defense can throw at you. But everything doesn't work out perfectly. As many as I've been playing with Getty, you still make mistakes sometimes. Sometimes it's my fault, sometimes it's his. But the beauty of it is you can go at it on the sideline, you can yell at each other, but we both understand that it's just about being in the heat of the moment. You can't let that affect you. We're all professionals here, and you have to move on.
Darian Durant, Double Talk continues here on this Monday. Appreciate your time as always. Want to get your reaction, though, to some calls that we had post-game as well as on our Prairie Land Rentals text line at 306-936-6262, condemning the Rough Riders for maybe targeting Sam Emilus as much as they did. Of course, he left the game with an injury late in the ball game trying to make a reception on third down. Targeted 12 times, 7 receptions for 66 yards, coming off the 6-game injured list. The narrative that was being brought to us was that the Riders shouldn't have been targeting him as much. Again, he's just coming off the 6-game injured list. What is your reaction to that?
I think that's crazy. I mean, he's getting paid the big bucks, man. He has a lot of responsibility on himself, and once you decide that you're good enough to play, then you have to take what comes with that. He knows that with Schaefer Baker out and with teams kind of keying into Keyshawn Johnson, that he's going to be the next guy available to get the targets. And, with him being one of the better receivers in the league, I mean, in order for Saskatchewan to win, you have to get him the ball. So there's no such thing as too many targets or easing your way back into the game or because you've been hurt. If that's the case, then you leave that up to the coaches to get you in, a couple plays here, take you out for a couple series and kind of ease you in that way. But if you're out there and you're running routes and you're the guy that's the read for the quarterback, then you're going to get the targets. So like I said, these guys get paid a lot of money. He's one of the higher paid guys in the league, and if he isn't healthy, then you have to leave him on the sideline. But if he is and he's out there in the game, you have to, especially if you're Trevor and he's your guy, you have to try to get him the ball. We're trying to win. We see the standings. We see what's going on with Edmonton. You try to fight off BC and the streak that they're on, and then Winnipeg is Winnipeg. So there's a lot of teams fighting for positions, and you can't afford to sit there and have your horses, on the sideline if they're available to go. So
hearing you loud and clear, Sam Emilus would have determined that he was okay to go, and therefore you trust him whatever percentage of health he's at. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that last pass at the end of the game where he kind of took a big hit, I just think that's just a product of the Riders being down, BC sitting back in coverage, and when sometimes if that's the situation and you're trying to score, you have to try to fit the ball to smaller windows and tight situations, and it's just one of those situations, man. It's unfortunate. If he would have came down with it and had been okay, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. But, as we see here on the replay, at the end of the day, you can see BC just sitting back in soft coverage, and they're able to just close in on the ball. And, that's just what happens.
Wes Cates was telling the story and talking a little bit about how the one season he injured his foot. And so he knew that one week it might be good, the next week it may not be good. But he was given the details as far as what he could expect as far as pain tolerance, what he could do as far as performance, and it was kind of his choice that, okay, I'm going to keep going and playing. I want to do that. Yeah. Is that the similar thing that would happen with you, for example? Darian, we know you're not 100%, but Can you go? Is that your call? Is that the medical team's call? Do you have to sit back and listen to your family and friends saying, Darian, don't push it? How does that conversation happen?
Well, it's a combination of all those things. Really, I mean, if you feel like you're ready to go, then the training staff has a list of things that you, or a so-called test that you have to pass, to make sure that you're as close to 100% as possible. They're not just going to let you out there if you can't go, especially when you're dealing with a lower body injury. They want to see you cutting smoothly. They want to make sure that, you can withstand a guy's weight bearing down on you and on your limbs and things like that. So it's not like you can just say, I feel the pressure behind me. We need this win. I want to get out there and play. No, there's a long list of things. You have to show that you're good to go. So, I mean, Emulus passed every test. And, I saw him at practice this week. He was smiling. He seemed as if he was ready to go. And he looked good early on. I think a guy rolled on him with one of the fumbles. He was around the pile, I think, and a defender came in and tried to recover a fumble and rolled up on his ankle, and you could see him limping after that. And then, that last pass play, he hit the ground pretty hard. So it's just an unfortunate situation. But like I said, I know he said he was good to go. The training staff gave him the okay, and that's just how it goes.
Do you want to get your thoughts on what happened around the CFL today with Ottawa bringing in Jim Popp? Before we do that, though, the play of the week might have been offensive lineman Daniel Johnson, who went in as a tight end and made the reception on the sidelines. As a quarterback, you're throwing that to a wide-open offensive lineman. How much pressure is there on you to just float that puppy in?
Yeah, it's a ton of pressure, man. And if you watch Trevor on this throw, he doesn't throw it like he would throw a typical out, right? He tries to make sure he guides it to make sure that it goes right in his chest. I'm more impressed with the run after catch than I am with the catch. I mean, the catch looked easy. It looked natural for a big guy, but for him to high step the sideline, break a tackle, get going, man, I'm more impressed with that. So, you may see something down the line in the playbook with this guy getting a rock, because he showed that he can make plays when, his opportunity comes.
Apparently, there was some tight end in him, or in his past football history.
You can definitely tell. You can definitely tell.
But he didn't even crack a smile or anything at the end of the play. It was a short yardage play 2 plays later when he kind of cracked the smile when the fellow big men came in.
Well, you can tell that the reason he didn't smile is because he's used to doing that, right? It's like, man, no need to congratulate me, no high five needed. This is what I do, right? So that was his attitude. And you could just tell how he walked, his swag, everything after the catch, right? You could tell that he's been there before.
And the story behind the catch as well, if you watch it, when he goes back to the huddle, he's going ahead and basically stroking the chest to make sure, reporting that he's an eligible receiver. Well, Daniel had a problem with that a couple of times this season. So what they've done in practice is they have different coaches put on a white hat. So before they run a rep, he has to run around to the coaches, find that white hat that says Daniel report, and physically report to them prior to every play.
Yeah, that's crazy. But it's such a crucial part of the game, right? Usually when you bring in that extra old lineman and he's reporting to the refs, it's more so in a short yardage situation where you're probably in scoring range and you're about to score a touchdown. So if you don't report, or, it's a huge third down conversion or something like that, if you don't report, now you're backed up 5 yards. Now you have to punt, or you're not scoring a touchdown. So it's a huge part of the game. And kudos to the Riders for kind of finding an innovative way to make sure he reports, because it's such a crucial part of the game.
Oh, boy, the stories that could be told, I'm sure, on that. Darian Durant, the big news in the CFL has been Ottawa Red Blacks, of course, fall to 0-10 this week. They bring in Jim Popp right now. What do you see? Obviously, Jim Popp. You've been around the game long enough. What is going to happen in Ottawa now?
Well, first and foremost, I think Jim Popp is one of the best evaluators of talent out there. So, what it seems to me is that Ottawa just has a problem with getting talent in there and getting guys, that are able to compete with the teams around the league. If you look at them, pretty much since Henry Burris left, they just haven't had the talent that they usually have. So, when it comes to scouting and finding guys that can really, really play, Jim Popp is one of the best to ever do it. And, he's great with putting coaching staff together. I think he'll just do a good job of just putting the pieces in place, not necessarily paying and wanting to overhaul everything. I think he'll go in there piece by piece, see what the weak links are, see what pieces of the puzzle need to be taken out, and just clean house from the inside. But I think this is a great move for Ottawa. They need to get the talent in there to be able to compete, and what better guy to bring in than Jim Pop to do that.
And Darian, I was reading this today, and I'm sorry to keep you long. I know that you mentioned he's the utmost talent evaluator, but the one thing that I read about him today, and maybe you can explain this better to me, is that he understands how the talent can be talented and work together, in the fact that he can build a team. Can you explain that?
Exactly. Yeah, like it's not necessarily about the biggest, strongest, or fastest guys. I think some talent evaluators get caught up in, he runs a 4.3 or he can bench 225 30 times. We need to give him a shot. No, Jim knows exactly his personnel, what type of players fit into the schemes, what type of players can evolve into. The CFL is a different game, right? So you need to go out there and find guys that know how to adjust to the game, guys that are smart. He's great at speaking to college coaches, kind of finding out if these guys can, learn on the fly, which the CFL is all about. You have to learn so much in a short amount of time. So he takes it beyond the field. He goes and gets guys that are locker room guys, character guys, and also guys that can fit in schematically with what they're trying to do and what the coaching staff is trying to do. So, it's an all-together thing with Jim Pop, and that's the reason why he's had so much success.
I know trades are difficult to make in the CFL, but Ottawa is beyond the 9-game threshold where now veterans' contracts are guaranteed. Can you see them trying to make moves? I don't want to say full-blown fire sale, but is that part of the process that Jim Pop would have been brought in for?
Yeah, maybe so. And who knows, man? They may have been consulting with Jim the entire season. You never know. But, I think what happened with Geno Lewis earlier this season, and we really talked about it, but I think that was kind of, dumping some salary before everything was guaranteed, with him being one of the highest paid receivers in the league. And, the rift going on in that locker room between him and Dinwiddie or him and Jake Mayer, that was the start of kind of cleaning up a little bit and getting certain attitudes and guys out of the locker room. So I think that was a start, and you'll see a little bit more slowly but surely as time goes on. But it's definitely going to be a culture change, and Ottawa is needed. And like I said, you have the right guy in charge to kind of come in, start over, clean house a little bit.
I know I keep apologizing for keeping you late, and then I ask another question. Does Eugene Lewis play again in the CFL if he wants to?
If he wants to, I think so. First he has to, look at the check that he's going to be cut by these teams and realize that it's not going to be what it was, and probably nowhere near that. So, and you just made a great point. It's now after week 9, with him being a vet, he can now come in on a minimum contract, and he can kind of pick and choose a little bit now, right? Kind of make sure you go to a team that has potential of winning a Grey Cup. So I think we'll see him again. He has to not necessarily humble himself, because I don't think that's the problem, but he kind of has to just come in and be ready to help and not necessarily look at himself as the star he once was.
Last thing for you, Darian, then. I know it's back to school. You've already been there, done that. I also understand that it's back to gymnastics. And some gymnastic studios have daddy-daughter days where dad goes in with daughter to see if they can complete the same amount of technical aspects that they've been practicing. So just a quick checklist. When you go for daddy-daughter day at gymnastics, can you do the forward roll?
I can do the forward roll. I can do a cartwheel. I can do some of the pull-up stuff. But when it comes to the front flips, back flips, and the stretching, that's my problem, man. The flexibility aspect of it is just not me. But other than that, I'm still able to hold my own a little bit, right? I'm not too far removed from the game. So right now, I can still go a little bit.
Backward roll, handstand?
No. Headstand, but not a handstand. I can get on my head and hold myself up, but handstand, no way. Shoulders can't take it anymore.
It's awesome to see you smiling about your daughters in gymnastics doubles. Appreciate you doing this as always.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Darian Durant, Double Talk with Darian Durant, of course, each and every Monday here on the Sports Cage. If you missed a moment of it, you can find it on our stream at sportscage.com. We are going to take a break. Joel Lipinski from Team Canada that just won at the IFAF World Men's Flag Football Championship. He was the defensive coordinator, is going to join us before 6 as well. Going to give you a chance to get in and pick the score for SaskTel right now. 306-936-6262. Simple. Tell us what the score is going to be. Riders Toronto on Saturday at Mosaic Stadium. You get it right, or at least closest to it, you win a $200 gift card from SaskTel. And the spin to win is going to happen momentarily from Colson, as he will give away 2 tickets for that game coming up here momentarily. So send us your text and your guesses to 306-936-6262. We take a timeout. We'll come back with more on the Sports Cage. You're listening on 620 CKRM, and of course we stream at sportscage.com. Rolling on the Monday Sports Cage at sportscage.com, streaming on X, and of course listening anywhere at 620 CKRM, of course, on our live stream as well there, too. Thank you so much for taking time with us this afternoon. It is time to go back on the Western Pizza guest hotline and a conversation that we enjoyed yesterday as we counted down towards kickoff with the Saskatchewan Roughriders and celebrated a massive achievement for a hometown talent in Joel Lipinski.
We're pleased to be joined on the line by the defensive coordinator for Canada's bronze medal winning men's flag football team. He, of course, runs Ignite Athletics up in Saskatoon and is the strength and conditioning coach for the University of Saskatchewan Huskies football team. Joel Lipinski joins us. Congratulations, Coach. Are you still on an adrenaline rush?
Thanks, Dave. I would say, definitely still on a rush, mostly just from like the jet lag, just kind of figuring out where I am and what's going on these days. But it's kind of starting to settle in now too. It's very cool.
What's up, man? It's been a while. Wes Cates here. I wanted to ask you, so obviously defensive play ended it and got you guys the bronze medal. Were you proud of the guys, like coaching them up? Because it was an interception, right, that basically ended the game?
I think statistically, we have the best defense in the world, which is obviously, and that's one of those things. It's pretty easy to be a good defensive coordinator if you have really good players. So, just super grateful for the guys, and again, just the situations that we kind of put them in. They made the plays, and it was honestly just surreal, super proud moment to kind of see it end that way for sure.
Not only, Coach, did you win an Olympic berth, but you also get the bronze medal to bring home as well. When you look back at the IFAF World Championship, did anything surprise you that maybe you weren't anticipating, or anything stand out that you hadn't necessarily completely prepared for?
I think that always happens at these tournaments. This is my fourth World Championship. Now, again, a few as a player, now a few as a coach. For us, we ended up having all this game film and game prep. Coach Lapo's, we're going to be the best film prep team in the world. And so, again, even leading into the tournament, hey, we're going to win our bracket. Once we win our bracket, we're probably going to end up playing Israel. After we play Israel, then we're going to move on to Mexico, and just had this plan laid out. And then all of a sudden, America Samoa upsets the States. We lose to Japan, and the bracket's completely blown up. We end up on the other side. And so now all of a sudden, we're prepping for America Samoa and Italy, and so again, teams that we don't really have any data on though too. So it was pretty much just work until 3-4 a.m. in the morning, sleep till about 5, and then player meetings kind of in the morning. Be okay, here's the game plan, and just kind of figure it out from there. But honestly, it was that's part of the tournament play that I absolutely love. It just you kind of just dive into the data, dive into the X's and O's, and how can you kind of get this set up. Retzi, obviously, shout out another Regina guy here too, was just massive from a video coordination standpoint. He was just standing outside in 37-degree heat, and he was wearing a red Team Canada hat, and I'm pretty sure his face and his entire body was as red as that hat by the end of the day, and everything uploaded for us ready to go. It was awesome.
So, Joe, I remember back when we played together, you always been into training and basically at an elite level as far as taking care of your body. Now you do that now with your elite fitness, and then do you put the guys on the flag team through a regimen, and do you keep them on some sort of training regimen that they have to adhere to, or do you kind of let them do their own thing?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So actually, I'm also, in addition to, being the defensive coordinator with the men's team, I'm also the IST coordinator and then head strength coach for both the men's and the women's team. And so, again, trying to again, facilitate strength conditioning where you have athletes situated all across the country. It isn't easy. So again, through Team Builder, like they've been following our program and again, have to be diligent with it. They've probably been on it for about the last 4 or 5 months now, kind of leading into the games. And then we kind of track everything through GPS. And so again, like how fast are they running? How much volume are they getting in practice? And again, just trying to make sure we had everybody in the green kind of like leading into the games. Again, even through the practices that we had beforehand. Again, there was one practice, I won't say which side of the ball here too, where it's just like, again, athletes ended up going a little bit heavier. So again, just understanding which athletes we need to pull back, that we can kind of put ourselves in the best position to win at these games. And that's kind of going to be the process in which we're going to continue on now through to LA 28.
Coach Joel Lipinski, you obviously put your money where your mouth is. I don't know how many times you've watched that interception on the final play in overtime of the bronze medal game, but man, your sprint speed was something else, catching the pile and enjoying that celebration.
Yeah, I'd say that's the first time since I tore my ACL and surgery probably about 4.5 months ago, and that's the first time I've actually sprinted, been cleared for return to run. But I think I might have broke 5 seconds there, pretty close, trying to chase it down. I was just looking for a hug, and nobody was there to give me one, so I just kept on going. It was good.
You ever get the itch to get back out there? Do you run drill? You throw the cleat? Well, I guess you haven't been able to. But did you used to throw the cleats on in practice with the guys?
I would say. And it was pretty, like, Chad Palmer was the head coach of the team when we went to Finland. I think it was 4 years ago. And, like, he convinced me, like, man, you can out-recruit yourself. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so ever since that point here, too, I've kind of embraced that coaching role. And, man, honestly, the group of players that we have right now is super special. Again, I'm 41 years old now. I can't actually look back and be like, okay, no, like, I'm not playing at this level right now anymore, and that's okay. I'll still go back to my rec leagues and rip around here too and have a great time because I love the game. But I'm going to leave the elite play for the elite players. Yeah.
All right, Joel. Well, I guess finally get us out on this. What's the plan moving forward towards 2028 for the men's program?
Hey Luke. But you do look good checking the mirror out there. But honestly, it's kind of one of these things where now we are one of the best teams in the world. And so, man, the amount of opportunities, like I know China wants us to go back out there. LA wants us to go back out there. We'll be hanging out in Chula Vista. I'm working on making Saskatoon kind of like our main training hub for the men's and the women's as well. So, honestly, it's going to be a lot of travel. Much to my wife's dismay, but I mean, hopefully it'll all kind of culminate with an Olympic medal here at some point for sure. But the amount of travel and camps kind of going on over the next 2 years is going to be pretty crazy. Yeah.
Well, Joel, congratulations. Again, well-earned bronze medal. The Olympic berth is something else. It's captured the minds and a lot of people's attention here in the country as well as the province. So congratulations on that, and thanks for doing this.
Awesome. No, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, let's go Durs. Here we go.
There you go. Defensive coordinator of the men's bronze medal winning flag football team, Joel Lipinski, joined us yesterday on our countdown to kickoff prior to the Riders and BC Lions. A lot of people weighing in on the score. Of course, why wouldn't you when you can win tickets to Saturday's game? Riders and Argos. James going 29-23 for the Argos, 17-13 for the Riders. Again, make sure you send in your name when you send us your text messages so that we can get you associated with the tickets that you may win on SaskTel's Pick the Score. Again, the text line is 306-936-6262. Also should mention the Rider Foundation 50/50. Mexico Family Escape, the early bird prize. If you get your ticket for Saturday's draw before Thursday night at 10 p.m., you can go online to riders5050.ca. That's riders5050.ca to get your tickets. And you could then get in on that early bird prize of the Mexico Family Escape, including return flights from Saskatchewan to Mazatlan, Mexico, 7 nights, and the Rio Emerald Bay. And the package includes tickets for 2 adults and 2 kids, all inclusive, or take $5,000 cash. That's a pretty good deal. $5,000 to Mexico for 4 people?
Yeah, that's impressive.
Does it say how long? 7 nights.
Really?
Yeah. I know there's probably some people who I have to take the kids. Hey, it is back to school season. As a parent, I hated to admit it. I truly did. As a parent, you're counting down to the back to school season. And as the countdown is on and your kids are younger, right, it's more emotional. Like, you're going to experience this soon, Colson.
I mean, not soon. I've still got 4-ish years, but
it comes quick, though.
I know. We're at 10 weeks, and it's already kind of like, man, there's wrinkles that are gone now that were there when he was born. Like, it sneaks up on you.
It does.
In every aspect.
It does. And then in the later years, it's more of a pep rally leading up to it, trying to get everybody excited to go back to school.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, when your kids are young, like Darian Durant's age, right, they get a ruler and the pencils and the new clothes and everything's cool.
Yeah.
But then when they get older, it's like, oh, do I have to go back? And how am I going to get out of bed? And all that stuff. It changes.
Yeah, definitely does.
Just saying. Interesting, the change that happened in Ottawa today. If you missed the big news, Jim Popp has been hired by the Ottawa Red Blacks, basically to take over as an advisor for the remainder of the season. Now, it to be determined whether or not that contract will be extended any further than the season. If you missed the conversation with JC Abbott or Justin Dunk from yesterday's pregame show talking about, of course, there is a football operations cap that is in place. And so apparently it is a very hard rule to dig up and put your fingers on when it comes to that cap. And of course, if you're changing coaches, changing general managers, so on and so forth. But that cap does have an immunity clause to it, if you know what I mean. So if you go ahead and you make a change at any of those positions, those salaries would then go ahead and stay on the books.
Yeah.
Against the cap. But with the immunity, there's apparently it's kind of like a get out of jail free card.
Exception clause even?
So yeah, you go ahead and you relieve someone of their duties, but for a couple of times in who knows how long the time span is, you can go ahead and change that. So apparently the Ottawa Red Blacks are not going to be completely on the hook because Sean Burke, the Vice President of Football Operations, was under contract through the 2027 season. So the remainder of this year and all of next, with apparently an option for 28, if I read that right. Interesting. From the text line, again, want to thank everyone for reaching out today. Hopefully I'm getting most of them. Dave up in PA picks the score of 30-27 for Saskatchewan. Says we, as in the Rough Riders, should acquire some receivers like Lewis that was cut from Ottawa because we have too many rookies playing. Otherwise, we'll have the same outcome against BC and Hamilton and need all of our players and need to send them a message that last week was no change and we lost. So we need to make changes, is I believe what Dave or Mark, or Dave in Prince Albert or Mark in Prince Albert, one of the two, have texted in. So I'm confused, but that's okay because that is a natural state for myself.
I can see where your confusion happened, and I'm also confused. Don't worry, you're not alone.
That's all good. 30-27 the score for Saskatchewan on that one, though. And as much as you want to sound the alarm bells, I don't know. Again, listening to Josh Donnelly, and if you missed it on the Riders Coaches show earlier, no alarm bells are sounding at Mosaic Stadium. It wasn't the greatest outcome. You want to win every game.
Yeah. Like we were saying last week with Hamilton, sometimes you just have an off game, and it's also not uncommon to have a few off games in a row, right?
Yeah.
So we've got Toronto this week. After that, it's Labor Day, and you feel like the guys will get amped up for that just because of the atmosphere of the game. But we'll see what happens with Toronto this next week if the guys can get their heads out of the clouds, get back in step.
Well, I don't even know if their heads were in the clouds. Like there's a handful of plays. There's 5 of them, right? That you could probably suggest change the outcome of the game. And again, the team strives to reach a standard that is close to perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that changing.
Yeah. Perfection is hard to reach, too.
Yeah. And I think it's, for my 2 cents, and probably nobody cares, but I think that it's awesome that Trevor Harris showed some emotion.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, I didn't spot it live. So when he showed some emotion, I think that's awesome because that's a kick in the pants because Trevor Harris is the ultimate leader to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And what Trevor does, the players follow. And so him showing that he's frustrated with the standard not being met shows that, hey, we're all in this together, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, my phone exploded after the fact, whether it was on social media or whatever the case might have been. And again, it's a good discussion point that I'm sure we'll continue with throughout the course of the week as we get set for the Toronto Argonauts coming in on Saturday. We'll take a final break. We need to get to our sports ticker as well as our sprinkle of the day. That's coming up next. This is the Sports Cage. We're at 620 CKRM and streaming on SportsCage.com. The Ottawa Red Blacks made a move today. They've appointed longtime CFL executive Jim Popp as senior football advisor. The move comes a day after the club fired Vice President of Football Operations Sean Burke with an 0-10 start to the season. Popp spent the last 28 seasons in the CFL, or has spent 28 seasons in the CFL as a coach. The last 7 he has spent down in the UFL as a talent evaluator. Interesting to see what happens in the nation capital this week as they take on the BC Lions. Other news on a different field, the Toronto Blue Jays, they are off tonight. They take on the Kansas City Royals tonight. There are 10 games on the docket in the major leagues. Of course, the American League wildcard spot is heating up. The Jays are a game and a half out, and the teams that they're chasing are back on the field tonight in Cleveland and the Texas Rangers. And that is your sports ticker. As Colson, it's time to switch gears and get into the sprinkle of the day, which of course is brought to you by our friends over at Sports Select. The sprinkle of the day, of course, use and choose wisely, but it's always a lot of fun getting in on more of the sports action you want. Easy as playing at sportselect.com. Simply make your picks online, generate your QR code, and lock in your bet at local lotto spot retailers. Every bet's 100% legal with the chance of winning cash in hand. Sports Select, when you're ready to play, bet on the original. Must be 18 plus to play responsibly. Looking at the lines for this week in the CFL, I mentioned Montreal. They take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this week. Montreal a heavy favorite by almost a touchdown on that. I don't see that changing despite Winnipeg being at home, but Winnipeg's been awful at Princess Auto Stadium.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Later this week, Hamilton takes on the Calgary Stampeders. Calgary favored by almost a touchdown. Calgary was on a bye week last week. It'll be interesting to find out the health of Vernon Adams Jr. Of course, he left the Leos last game against BC and did not return. So we'll have to wait and find out there. Toronto, Saskatchewan, that game on Saturday at Mosaic Stadium. The Riders are favored by 5.5.
All of the games are within like 2 points of each other with all the spreads, because even BC is only favored by a touchdown over Ottawa. Huh.
Interesting.
Am
I wrong saying that the Ottawa Red Blacks have to or are going to win at some point this season?
You're not wrong for saying that, no. The question still is when, because like their last game is against Hamilton, which if Hamilton needs to, I know, right?
Yeah,
and again, it's at the same time as the Riders play the Elks.
Yeah.
Which game's going to be more watched? Because it's either a battle for first in the West or a battle for last in the East, most likely. Now, if Ottawa still doesn't have a win then, but if Hamilton needs to get in the playoffs, do they get the win? Probably not, because Hamilton will still be playing. If the game is meaningless for both of them, do they win? Or is Hamilton like, no, we're not going to be the one? So, even to the last week, it gets dicey.
Okay, I'll throw this out. I know we're almost out of time. Real quick, though, Bo Levi Mitchell could be back for Hamilton in that game, and they would probably play him. Just throwing that out there.
If they need to make the playoffs. If the season's already over for them.
Oh, true, very true.
Yeah, because you don't want to get him injured again right at the end of the season.
True, but I know I'm probably in the minority on this one. I do think that there is talent on the Ottawa team. That's all I'm going to say. We got to leave it there. Picking up the conversation tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, it will be Barney Shankaruk on the Sports Cage. He's got Arash Madani, Glenn Suter, and more lined up for a terrific show. Tune in then. If you missed a moment of today's program, go to sportscage.com. You'll find the podcast of your favorite guests right there at the click of a mouse or the tip of your fingers on your phone. Thank you to Colson for keeping this thing on the rails today. All of our guests. Again, the Sports Cage, you can find out the latest on the Rough Riders and more at sportscage.com. We will talk to you soon. Peace out from downtown Regina on 620 CKRM and sportscage.com.